The Board of Selectmen to order. If I could have an acceptance of the agenda, please.
So moved.
Second. And a second. Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Just before I go to the walk-ins tonight, Nancy was nice enough to sit in for Tricia. Tricia's on vacation. Sheila Manning, who is filling in until we have another secretary, is stuck on vacation with the ice storm. She will not be here tonight.
But she will be taking minutes,
Thank you. Yes, based on the video.
Right.
It's being played.
and I'll jot down some stuff as well.
All right. Mr. Murray is not with us tonight, so we'll get started, if that's all right. Are there any walk-ins tonight? Mr. Ball? Hi, David, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good, good.
I don't want to take much of your time. I just wanted to give everybody on the board an update on the status of the flood insurance bill before Congress. Right now, as we speak, the House of Representatives, I guess, is still debating the House version of the bill. We're quite optimistic it's going to pass. They're supposed to be taking the vote tonight, so we'll know at the end of this meeting what has happened.
Yeah, they delayed it till 6:30 something, Dave, didn't they? So
Right,
start the vote,
right.
yeah.
So at 6:30, I believe they started taking the vote. If that passes, and we hope it does, then obviously the House version is different than the Senate version. It'll have to go to committee to resolve the differences. Actually, the House bill is better than the Senate version. So we don't know how that will all play out, but we're quite hopeful that it's all going to move forward the way we want it to. Town of Scituate should be very pleased that everybody in the town should be very pleased that Selectmen decided to appeal the maps because they have been put off for some time until 2015. So that's good news as well. Finally, my only other comment is, we've said it before, but anybody that has a flood insurance policy coming due should absolutely make sure it gets paid before the due date, because if they don't, they likely will lose that grandfathering in the program. So that's it.
Before you leave,
Yes.
can I just ask you a generic question? So
Yep.
you just said you'd be pleased with what, if best case scenario, would that mean that the homeowners that have that insurance now wouldn't necessarily change at all, Dave? And I don't want to hold you to it, but you seem to know.
Right now, as we understand the House version of the bill, it will help primary homeowners. It will take away, at least for now, that kick-in where somebody that had bought a house after July of 2012 having to pay the higher premiums. It does not help, however, secondary homes or businesses. So there's still concerns out there. It's not going to take care of all the issues, but it's going to take care of some of them. And we're working on long-term resolutions to the other two situations as well.
Okay, and before anyone else jumps in, and Dave, I don't know where we'd be without you and your whole group of host of people that have attended meeting after meeting after meeting, and really doing it. It's part of your life, and I know it always has been for you where you live out on the point, but you are without a doubt, in my mind, one of the most knowledgeable people about this, and have brought it to everyone's attention to try to keep this in everyone's right forefront in the most important item this town or this whole area has seen for many, many years. So I want to thank you for
Well, thank you.
all the
I mean, Jim
time
Cantwell
you
has
spent.
been just incredible with this whole thing as well as Representative Lynch and Bob Helland, the whole crew. So we're very hopeful.
Right, okay. Anyone else before Dave takes off?
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, you really started it back
Grassroots.
in that meeting when you came here and started this whole grassroots movement. So, thank you for you. And like you said, there's dozens of other people
Right.
from Marshfield as well that have been
Right.
pushing this along, so.
Educating, that is us. All right, thanks.
Okay.
All right, okay. Are there any other walk-ins tonight? Steve, do you mind coming up?
Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Hopefully I'll be quicker than Dave was.
What's your name and address?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
I
Steve
thought
B.
it-
Orkland. We did a small project on
Your address,
Cushing
too.
Park Road. I actually live at 15 Captain Daniel
Right.
Litchfield Lane in Scituate. But we did a small project over off of Judge Cushing Way or Cushing Park Way, where Judge Cushing's tomb is off Nealgate Street. And as part of that, we put some money in escrow to do a top coat of pavement on part of the road over there. And we've been working with Steve Gammon from Wampatuck State Park and the state at actually trying to get them to redo the entire road over there and pulverize all the pavement and put down probably a 2-inch course of asphalt over there. And it looks like that may happen, but they have asked me if I may be able to get some support from the town, just saying that it would be a great thing for the state to go and fix up this road. And I don't know if any of you have been up there or not. I know that, Tony, you certainly know the road.
Yeah, definitely.
They haven't touched it since 1960, and all I'm doing is just going to the different departments to see if they would just draft a quick letter saying it'd be a great thing for Scituate to have better access up to that state park. That's it.
Yeah, I used to live on that road, and it gets beaten up. There's trees that are in the middle of it, and it goes back to not only to the cemetery back there, but there's all kinds of walking paths back there as well. So I support it 100%.
Yeah, I don't see a downside to that. Steve and I were talking about this earlier, and between then and now, I still haven't come up with an idea why we shouldn't endorse something like
It's
this.
a state road, though.
It's a state-owned road. Again, the state's gonna pick up the cost. The money we have in escrow is gonna be given to the state. So instead of doing it piecemeal, we're just trying to get together and do the whole thing as one project.
What do the neighbors say? Are they-
I'm sure the neighbors are gonna be ecstatic up there. I mean, you live there, so you kinda know what they've gone through. It's just, the road's deplorable. And if we just put a top coat on, I'm afraid that the base it's not gonna last.
Right.
And that's why the state, I think, will pulverize it and do a much more thorough job, and the road will last an awful lot longer. And I know that there's been some conversations between Mr. Ball and Steve Gammon, and from the historical side of it, and they're gonna try and get some support there as well. But I don't see any downside to anybody supporting this, especially if the state's taking care of it.
Good.
So that's it.
John, do you have?
Yeah, I was just going to say, no, absolutely. I think it's a great potential. I've always said that's, I think, the smallest state park in Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and it's the most underutilized park. It's also, many people in our town don't realize where it is and what it's all about, which is unfortunate, but I think we should try to further, I was going to say exploit it, but in other words, make it more knowledgeable for people. And the other thing I've always said is that the causeway that connects Cushing Road to Neil Gate Road should be actually more of a bike path, so that people on Neil Gate can actually access the Greenbush area and make it more accessible and get people off the main roads. I think it's a wonderful idea, and if it has to come back as a topic on our agenda, I'd fully support that, so.
Yeah, and I don't believe that part of the road's actually owned by the state.
No, it's
So
not.
That would be a town project if
It
that
would
came
be.
forward, but.
CPC would be a good project.
This would actually create a better parking area from what's up there at the end. It used to be striped and all that, and it's just.
It's a mess.
Yeah, it's just completely gone, so they're actually talking about redoing the parking area as well with it, so it seems like a great project, so. Any support?
Yep, absolutely.
Do you need a letter or something,
How
or-
quick do you need this?
As fast as we can. I mean, it's great if I can, if you guys vote to support it.
We can't
and
do
I
it
can tell
tonight
them a
because
letter
of
is coming through.
probably
It's not
what we
on.
can do is we can put it on an agenda for next week, because we're meeting on
Okay.
the 11th, and then, and discuss it and maybe vote on it that time, Steve.
That's great.
All right, okay.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Ball, Dave?
Yeah, just quickly, I've talked to Steve, and I've also, Steve, I've also talked to Steve Gammon from DCR. And the society obviously supports this whole thing. The road is in terrible shape, needs to be done.
All right, great. Okay, thank you. Are there any other walk-ins tonight? If not, I'll go to the first agenda item, which is a discussion and a vote. Ballot questions for the election of the planning board member who has resigned. Thank you for coming in, Kathy.
Good
If you
evening.
just kind of update everyone who's watching what's happening here.
Okay, so I received the resignation of Eric Mercer on February 12th from the Planning Board. And his office, I think his appointment runs out in 2016. 16. And so after speaking with somebody at the Secretary of State's Division, well, let me back up a minute. Usually, there would be an appointment by the Board of Selectmen, a temporary appointment until the next ensuing town election. There really isn't a lot of time. The election's, a couple months away. So normally, if you did an appointment, I would get a letter of that appointment, and it would say, roll call vote by the Board of Selectmen ensuing term, May, town election, of whatever year. And so that was like my letter from you saying that this term ends on and the vacancy will occur on that town election. But because we don't have an appointment, I need something in writing from the Board of Selectmen that tells me, a vote by the Board of Selectmen as well, that tells me that you've accepted the resignation of Eric, and also that, well, let me read what I wrote. Anyhow, after speaking with somebody at the Secretary of State's office in the Election Division, according to Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 10, which is the last paragraph, I need a notice from the Board of Selectmen indicating a roll call vote for approval of an election for the office of Planning Board Position 1 for 2 years, which is the remainder of a term, at the May 2014 annual town election in order to place this position on the ballot. The deadline for the notice is Friday, March 21st, 2014, which is 15 days prior to the April 7th deadline for nominees to get their papers in for that election. And that's it. I've enclosed a copy of Mass General Law and also Eric's letter I true copied for you.
Okay.
Motion?
If there aren't any questions, please, Tom.
Well, first, do we do a roll call?
No, I think
First
that's,
make-
what that's referring to, I think if we were gonna make an appointment, the planning board would be here, would do a joint roll call.
Oh, I see.
And to make that appointment, I think I've done that a few times in the past, so I don't think we have to do that in this case.
This is just putting it on the
Yeah, and you
ballot.
have to vote to put it on, yeah.
You know what? Why don't you make the, if you know,
I think it's right here, right? So
Will the
just-
Board of Selectmen include on the May 2014 election ballot the election of a planning board member?
Second.
Motion a second? All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
That's easy.
All right.
Thank you.
And then follow up with a letter from us
Yes,
to you.
yes,
as
by
I understand.
March 21st. Yep, okay.
Thank you, Kathy.
Kathy, thank you.
gentlemen.
The next is a discussion and a vote for the minor activities permit fee with our conservation agent. Hi, Pat, how are you?
Pat, how are you?
Pat Gallivan from Conservation Office. You should have a memo on minor activity permits. We've been issuing these minor activity permits for a while. We had the storms last year, and people wanted to clean up, the stones from the driveway or put things back on the beach. Rather than come in and do a full permit application with us and going through the state, we allowed that to be done. But we wanted to have some control on it to make sure that they weren't either going through an abutter's property or damaging something else. So we would, pay a visit out there, just issue a permit on the spot. And we're allowed to do that. But to charge any fees for something like this, we have to go back to the Board of Selectmen, any type of establishment of fees. Because it's, it takes time from the office and, there's some site visits involved. We figured there should be some fee attached. I think most of the people, the homeowners and the contractors, would prefer to have a minor activity fee that could be paid on the spot, allow them to get going on their work, rather than have to come back into us and file and have a public hearing. There'll still be a lot of things that would require a hearing if they're gonna be doing any disturbance or, bigger jobs, or if it's something that could impact an abutter. We would want them to file with us so there could be proper abutter notification, newspaper things. But somebody wanted to put a footing on the deck, and then I could go out there, take a look and say, gee, that could be done without any damage to any resource, we should be able to allow that, so.
Pat, when I was looking it over, my first thought, you had made a reference to people like after a storm, to allow them to do some stuff. And I thought, maybe it's like putting salt in the wound, but if there's an upside, and later I read it and you just said it, by saving that person, homeowner, contractor, of coming in, I think it's worth $50. It's well worth, they're gonna save time. So am I right? There's a little bit of give and take, and if Frank just walked in, feel free to chime in, Frank. Is there a plus side to this? So if it saves someone from coming into a hearing, or at least to see you, to meet with you, gee, I think it's
Yeah.
a win-win situation.
Right, and I think it's important, though, that we do get the call and we go out and look at these sites, rather than have people, okay, just go do it on your own. So we do have a checkpoint that we would say, yeah, it looks like it could be done without any damage. We talked about what type of fee. We don't want to make it, another fee that people are going to have trouble paying. We keep it, a moderate amount, and then we'd cover our costs. But And Frank and the commission members have talked about maybe if the fees were something that we could use for trail maintenance or signs or something like that, but we're open to suggestions on that. So.
Anyone else have any comments?
Just one question, one thing in my mind is, it seems like it's kind of subjective, so is it you that's gonna go out there and decide whether it's a minor one or a major one?
Yeah,
Or
it is
are there
subjective.
other, who else would be able to do it?
Can I add just a little bit?
Sure,
I'm not
sure.
where Pat was, but if you think about it, this town of Scituate bylaws are more restrictive than the state. So, you know, the two filings we would typically get would be a notice of intent, or the simpler one would be an RDA, but it still has some complexity to the forms. And a lot of the things that people are doing really are like maybe in the buffer zone that the town imposes, as opposed to what the state may require. So some of the things that Pat could look at would be, well, is this a town requirement that's not part of a state requirement? And as he, you know, as he said, it would just be a simpler way for people to do it. If it goes, if it's a requirement like a Wetlands Protection Act issue or something that the state already has jurisdiction on, obviously they're gonna file their RDA or their notice. But a lot of the things are really minor in nature, and as Pat said, you know, just to get folks to come in and apply if they don't think it's gonna be a big ordeal, if they don't have a waiting period. So it's a little bit of Pat saying, you know,
Right.
this is not a big.
Getting to what Tony was asking though too, it is subjective, but what I think we hope we can do is, after some time, we'll get to know what types of things, so we could put those activities in the regulations, under these circumstances. You know, right now it's like storm cleanup, you know, sauna tubes in a buffer area and things like that, but, you know, we could try to, you know, narrow down what types of activities we'd allow.
So are you gonna actually put that in writing so that we know, you'll add that to the regulations?
Yeah, we could do that. And we can do a regulation change with a vote of the commission.
I think that's important, Pat, because here's my problem, if I could just.
Well, just the
Okay, go
last,
ahead.
my other question was, are you the one that's gonna do it, or is any inspector gonna go out there and decide that?
It has been me on these. And commission members a lot of times will accompany me, and, you know, we can talk about it too.
But it should be the agent.
Yeah.
It should be the agent.
That,
I agree.
that should be part of the regulation.
The reason why I say it is, initially I read this and I was thinking, more, another level of bureaucracy. But then I was thinking, the way you put it, I'm like, it makes sense. I would like to have the town go out to make sure, if somebody has something that's illegal to begin with, I don't want to sanction it and have it recreated in an area that it shouldn't have been in the first instance. Certainly that's happened in the past. But then I was thinking about times past, there have been some abuses, and I've thought to myself, I don't want to have people having to go through a long process. And Pat, you've been great. Frank, you've been great. It's just, that's the fear I have. I think if you put something to writing, to say these are the specific instances that this would fit under, it would be a lot easier, because then you could say, here it is. So if it's after storm cleanup, boom, sonotubes, footings, providing it doesn't impact, like, as you say, the Wetland Protection Act or this or that. I think that's much more helpful. Otherwise, when you're gone, Frank, you're not on the commission, somebody comes in, and then they go, and a homeowner says, I just want to do this, and then your successor might say, well, no, you can't. That's the only thing I fear, just if we had something in writing, that's all.
Yeah.
I'll support it, and I think having something like a nominal fee of $25 or $30 makes sense for the town to be able to review it and go through it. And it also ensures that what they're going to be doing fits within the criteria to protect the town and the conservation. So that's the only thing I kind of felt, and I think it's a great idea to avoid the RDAs and the notice of intent.
I think it also encourages people who may have wanted to just do the project and say, well, probably nobody will know I'm doing this. It may encourage them to come forward and say, gee, here's what I have in mind, and we might be able to suggest a safer way to do it, or, gee, that's really going to impact an abutter. You really need to, you know, file and let the abutter know.
I agree.
Just a quick question, Frank. How difficult would it be, Pat, to put what it would encompass for that? In other words, you're always going to have situations that, oh, does it fall under this?
Right.
How do you do that?
There's gray areas, and we've learned a lot this year. We've issued about 30 of them,
Right.
and a lot of them are similar things, but you may get like tree limb kind of things. We could have a category if, you know, you're going to cut a couple of trees, you have a tree leaning on your house. We don't want your house to get damaged.
Right.
We don't need to do a full filing for that, so
Okay.
we could come up with a list and, you know.
Okay.
Say there was some trees that got uprooted in between your home and a wetland, they're already down. And then Pat could be quite clear, you just go in, remove those, you're not doing any other work,
Take down all the other trees.
that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
right, while you're there.
But part of Pat's question is though, in terms of the fee, if we are charging a fee, a few years ago, the commission used to get some funding to take care of trails, the Driftway Park, things like that, and we were hopeful that, I know that in the case of the building department, or maybe even the Board of Health, those fees go into the general fund. But we were hopeful that maybe when the minor activities ones, that we could use them for those kind of things. And, we've been fortunate, we've got some a scout troop that's been helping out at the Driftway Park and some volunteers, but we don't have any funding to take care of any of the properties, other than using volunteers right now, or coming back
We
and
do that?
asking for it.
Can we do that?
I was just gonna ask,
Nancy?
not to put you on the
It'd be a general
spot.
fund receipt.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
It'd be a general fund receipt.
But you
Okay, so
could,
it
we could
couldn't go
implement it
this-
into the budget, though.
Yeah, I mean, the need for trails assistance is definitely something that could be built into the budget as land management under the Conservation Commission budget.
So you can't necessarily set up a specific fund, but we could do it through the budgeting. And I would agree, speaking for myself, to do that, so you could fund to maintain those trails or signage or
It's not a
other
lot of
areas.
money, but-
No, that's what I'm saying. That's the reason why I say it would make sense.
We've used some students and.
It's not going to make a difference on our budget as a whole, but it would make a difference on the trails and for the conservation. Makes sense.
Okay.
You just said something, you've done 30 of them so far, so we're already doing this.
Without fees, right.
Without
we've- we've gonna-
So it's just, you're giving them the permit right on this, you're going there and writing it
Yeah,
up right
we
away?
print it up on the computer, we number it, we track it, and we hand it to them. They stick it in their truck window if they have a contractor's truck.
So hypothetically, so you hand this person and they hand you $50 cash, is that what?
Well, no, right now, well, we haven't thought about it. Yeah, I would say cash is probably not a good idea. But, I mean, we could, have some kind of a check system, check with Nancy or something.
I mean, maybe we need that in place before we, John had a good point of getting the things written up. Do we just want to make a motion to set a fee to it, or do we want to get these few other things, like how you handle the receipts and the?
Well, let's try to accomplish something tonight and make a motion to at least establish this.
Could
with a
you
fee.
get something, again, I hate to push things off a week, but we're meeting again next week in 7 days. So something you can put together and, within 7 days to kind of list it and then
Sure.
put it on? Because, I think we're probably in favor of it.
Yeah.
It's just, I'd rather have something, Pat, again, it has no reflection on you. It's just,
No, not at
it's
all.
your successors saying, these are the reasons for doing it, and nobody coming, that's my only, I'm
And I
all
think just
for it.
a 10-minute conversation with Nancy will say, this is how we're going to handle it. It's got to be a check, it's got to come with this, and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So we can set the framework up and then do it next
Sure.
week.
All right, okay.
That
Just
was
move another night out, Frank, that's all right, that's all. Thanks, guys. All right, we won't
Thank you, Pat, thank you.
hold off, I guess.
So Sheila, if you can put that on next week's agenda.
It'll be quick, though. It will be quick.
The next agenda item is to review the town meeting petition articles. The first one is the feasibility of the senior center. Hi, Mrs. Paul, how are you?
I'm fine.
Good.
We do have a name change on that. It's not a feasibility study. It's a needs assessment,
Okay, all right.
all
I
right?
thought I saw a note that you had written to me earlier, so, and I see that's what's on your petition.
Exactly.
Right, so, okay.
Do you want me to read the petition?
Sure, if you don't mind.
Okay. Transfer of funds for senior center needs assessment. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate transfer from available funds and/or borrow pursuant to any applicable statutes the sum of $25,000 to the town of Scituate's FY15 budget for the purpose of hiring a consultant to conduct a needs assessment for a new Scituate Senior Center, or take any other action related thereto. The Friends of Scituate Seniors and other citizens are here tonight to present a petition for a town meeting article for a needs assessment study for seniors of this town. Ellen Bernardi is going to explain to you what a needs assessment study is and how it will help benefit the seniors and the whole town.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. You want my name and?
Please, your name and address if you don't mind.
Ellen Bernardi, 616 Hatherley Road. I did want to address these 2 points which Joanne mentioned. What is a senior center needs assessment survey, and how the town of Scituate will benefit. This study will help the town understand the programs and services needed now and in the future. With the information gained, our town will be better prepared to plan a new senior center that will adequately accommodate those programs and services for the long term. As Joanne said, a group of concerned citizens, with the support of the Council on Aging Board of Directors and former Council of Aging Director Florence Choate, have embarked upon a quest to define the needs, spaces, and assistance opportunities for our rapidly growing senior population. Our own Council on Aging valiantly attempts to address the varied needs of our Scituate elders. As with any rapidly growing program and population, space, time, and resource needs outdistance the present format. According to the 2010 Massachusetts Census, in comparison to the rest of the state, Scituate's population is older, both between the ages of 45 to 60 years and those who are 60-plus years. In the Scituate 2012 report of the Registry of Voters, the population of those under the age of 60 years has declined, while the number of seniors has increased, with our total number of residents remaining almost devoid of appreciable growth. At the present time, our town knows of 55 senior residents, which represents 40% of the voting population, or 3 out of 10 Scituate residents. By 2020, only 6 years hence, Scituate expects to be the home for roughly 8,500 elders, or approximately 1 out of 2 residents. Statistics and interviews substantiate the premise that aging well for seniors is to, quote, age in place, meaning in their own homes or with family and friends. More than 25% of Scituate's elder population lives alone. Only 5% live in group settings, such as nursing homes, and 69% live with others. Providing resources for the demonstrated needs of senior residents has become the work of senior centers. They include health and wellness programs, Medicare explanation and benefits information, senior housing, evacuation issues, educational courses, intergenerational programs, human services, caregiver groups, and of course, transportation, in-house and municipal. Added to this imposing list are town programs, which are either under the direction of or in conjunction with the Council on Aging, the Town Fuel Assistance Program, the GATRA Bus Transportation Contract, evaluations for protective services, and insurance assessment through SHINE, which is the Massachusetts State Agency. I don't know if people know that that stands for Serving the Health Insurance Needs of Everyone. How has this increase in elder population affected town services and departments? What will be needed by them educationally and practically to adequately serve this growing population? The plan for this demographic change will be studied in the Senior Center Needs Assessment Survey. The use of community comparisons, key information from town leadership, focus groups, community forums, sample surveys, and consultation with adjoining towns for recommendations and suggestions are tools that are used by responsible needs assessment programs. This will ensure that the planning and financial impact on our town will be informed and accurate. We're always encouraged to plan for the future, be it for the town with schools, repair of seawalls, new water pipes, our new library, and introducing green utilities. Individually, we're told to plan for our financial, health, and insurance needs. By supporting this petition, and hopefully the recommendations that follow, we will be planning for our future as Scituate residents and for Scituate, our town. We would appreciate a vote of support for our petition from this Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
The dollar amount is, as we have the backup, $25,000, and I think we have money left over from an annual town meeting of $19,000, so it's just an additional $6,000. Tony, you wrote me a couple of notes, and Marty, go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I guess I was, in the stuff that you were saying, I was a little bit confused if it was more service-based or more space-based, and obviously some combination of the two. Right, but it seemed, and when you're talking about it, seemed more like services. What services do we need? What programs do we need to
The
impact?
actual spaces from our, going around to different towns right now, because we're going to different towns, there are at least 23 spaces that need to be able to be used for the different programs that we need to be able to offer to seniors. And that's even combining some of them together. We also are hoping that we could maybe put the veterans in with us and let them have some spaces too. We have been told that it's very difficult to share with recreation. These are communities that are saying this. The Board of Health, Quincy has the Board of Health, and the mayor in Quincy is getting ready to move the Board of Health out for their senior center to give them more space.
Maybe, excuse me, I can just
Yeah.
give you a little, at a very lovely gathering for Florence last week, as Citizen of the Year, I was speaking with a couple of seniors, and they were telling me the story of how they were doing, because Pier 44 is not in such great shape, they were doing yoga in the senior center, and people were coming in to get to the office and walking around the yoga people, and the MAPS program was trying to go on, and they were talking, and then they wanted to show a slideshow, so they shut the lights, and the office had to come out and say, please put on the lights because we can't see. So that's 3 activities that are going on at one time. And we have been advised to look for, and that's why we're doing the needs survey, to look for and answer the question of what are our needs and what are the spaces needed for them.
Great. Tony, anything else?
I think it's great. I think it's needed. It's one of the top priorities that need to be taken care of in the town, so I support it.
Think we got our money's worth out of the fire station, do you?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's well needed. We need to, obviously, like we were saying, it's not just the space, it's the activities and things that are going on. And we need to know where we need to be. So I think it's a fair way of coming up with what the needs of Scituate are, exactly.
So can we take that as
Well, we'll
meaning
vote.
you will support
Can we
this
vote tonight?
petition at the town meeting?
Well, we'll eventually
We're not-
vote, so.
Yeah, we're not gonna vote it tonight, but I think you can get the sense from us
Yeah.
where it's gonna go.
I think it's
You know,
important.
this is a very easy one. I'll wait for, if John, you wanna
I was
comment?
going to say, if
not-
you guys are going to give me a chance or not. You have my vote, all right? We're not going to vote it tonight. We're voting everything next Tuesday, but you'll have our vote. You got my vote, you've heard it. I will say that you should, I'm curious to see what other towns the size of Scituate population have for a senior center, and then I'd also like to go beyond that and say, here's the be-all, end-all, the pipe dream, and whether it's the same size town or whether it's a smaller town, because I know I've seen some that are just spectacular, and I'd like to see at least kind of like, you know, this would be the best if we could get it, but ultimately the minimum basis that you need, because I'd like to go in between there, if not the best. I'd like to be able to say that Scituate has the best senior community center on the South Shore, maybe Massachusetts. It would be nice to have that.
To answer you a little bit on that, John, Plymouth, we decided was the be-all to have all. And we did find, when we went in there, it lacked the warmth.
That's key. Yeah.
that Duxbury, when you walk into Duxbury, seniors feel welcomed. And we went to Quincy, and in Quincy, they spent $1 million on their school, the school, but it still feels like a school. They have the rooms, but even the entry is not a warm feeling. We went to Weymouth, and we discovered they spent just enough to paint it and put new carpet in the director's area, and that definitely is a problem. Florence went to Hanover, and they've got the land to grow. But they went with the smaller space, but they know they've got to grow, and Marshfield is going up. So-
I said this to Florence, and congratulations, Florence, about Orleans. I was amazed at what they have down in Orleans. And if Orleans can have it, I'm like, there's absolutely no reason why Scituate can't have what Orleans has. So I'm just saying, and I've seen Agawam too, so that's why I say, I know this is a great opportunity for us as a town to take a look at assessments, but also spatially, and try to figure out what we're going to get and work towards it. But again, you have my vote.
Thank you very much.
All right. I was going to say the same thing, John. Did look at what other towns did, what works and what doesn't work. Florence, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just
You wanna add
wanted to
something?
say that something, when I started at the senior center, there was no one going into the building. I mean, there had been a reason for that, but I could not, every year I had to do an evaluation for the state in terms of what we did for services, how many volunteers, how many people came through the doors. And I was shocked. We had 4,399 seniors that had come through our doors for one thing or another. And one of the things that I think any study that I've read or done or spoken to people who are experts on this, this is not only for the seniors, this is for the community, because they're coming. We're not gonna put them down, they're coming. And if we make plans and we provide what's needed in terms of health and wellness, we will save money, we will save ambulance rides, we will have seniors who are more independent, we will have less seniors going for medicine. It's a win-win, and if we do nothing, then we're stuck and we're saying, okay, what do we do now? We let this go. You know, there are many towns, and one of the things we're doing next month is going to Boston to look at grants. And the thing is that we do not want to be the last people out there looking for this stuff, because it's going to be gone. So we need to do this now, and it is just imperative, not only for the seniors, but for the towns and the taxpayers and the kids coming up. This is something that has to be done.
I just want to add one thing to what Florence was saying. The numbers for the seniors in this town are staggering. If you look at percentage-wise, where we're going to be in 4 to 5 years. So when we look at population, it's not necessarily the population of the town per se, it's the population of what the seniors are to the town.
To her point.
By 2020.
Baby boomers are on the way.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So it's good, it's pretty incredible. I was pretty surprised to see those numbers.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much
very
for
much.
listening.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
I guess I'm joining them soon.
Yeah, The next petitions article is the allocation of $1 million for the foreshore protection. We'll give Mr. Ball a few minutes to make his way up front.
She's playing a conservative. Well, when they consider seniors, we're talking about 60 plus, not 55 or 70. That's 60 plus. I've been getting AARP stuff since I was 44. I'm like, throw that away. What is that? So Jack won't be here tonight, Sean, then, right? For one of the Jack Manning.
It doesn't, no,
He's
because he
on.
was driving back from.
He's stuck with her, I assume.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're driving back from Kentucky right now.
They were in Ohio this afternoon.
They were.
Just joking, Chief.
Oh, we all are, you know, it's. Still painting?
Take a break after this. Jim wanted a picture with us, but without Rick, I don't know if he's gonna want to do it. Jim. I tried to call you back. Your mailbox is full. Rick, did you, I guess Marty told
I
you.
had already let you know.
All right, so. Sorry?
Is the vote finished yet?
Maybe after this, we can bring him up.
All right, okay, you mind? All right. Sorry, guys, I just had to say hello to Jim, all right?
Yeah, we knew he was coming. We're glad he's here.
As I said earlier, this is the second citizens petition article, and like the first one, Dave would listen to it and vote next week, all right, at our next meeting.
You're meeting next week, right?
Yes. The
Yep.
11th.
Well, I'm Dave Ball, member of the Scituate Coastal Coalition. Live at 44 Rebecca Road, and I'd like to introduce Bill Graham, who is another member of the Scituate Coastal Coalition.
Reside at 14 Children Ave, which is down in Minot, if you're not familiar with it.
Sean, would you like me to read the
If you,
actual text of
if
the
you
petition?
would, if you don't mind, Dave. It's-
To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds in the treasury the sum of $1 million for the purpose of repairing, reconstructing, or maintaining existing foreshore protection structures in the town of Scituate. In a second, Bill is going to be showing you several poster images of seawalls around town. The citizens' article is being presented for action by the Scituate Coastal Coalition. The Scituate Coastal Coalition is comprised of all 10 beach associations in town. They run from Minot down to South Hummerock. Maybe, Bill, this would be a good time to go through the 4 posters that we have here.
Yeah, what we've done is just casually taken some photos. Gentlemen, you can see that?
Yep,
That
sure.
one. That is on Oceanside. For anybody in the room, that's a seawall on Oceanside. Our next one is on Lighthouse Road.
When were these taken, Bill?
These were within the
Last
last
week.
2 weeks.
Last week.
And it just shows you the character of the cement. What you have is beach rock mixed in with sand and no reinforcement in the seawalls and just crumbling. This is Edward Foster Road, and this is the seawall that's across from the Maritime Center. That the underpinnings have just totally disappeared and the wall is collapsing and we're getting a washover across the road and into the Maritime Center. And we have a breach here that this is happened this year, and it's on Turner Road, Oceanside, and a section of the wall has blown out. It's about 10 feet long and about 2.5 feet high here, and it's just blown the top right off of it. And as a temporary repair, they tried to put some sandbags there to hold back some water, but first serious waves will send those flying somewhere else.
Before you go on, can I just ask you were all these seawalls built about the same time? All those ones?
Pretty
there?
much. I'm guessing that the Turner Road one that you're looking at right there was, I remember that they did a lot of work on those walls in the early 60s, late 50s. I'm guessing now that that one was, Bill, can you go back over there and we'll just go through them again? I'm
The one on
guessing-
Edward Foster would have been after the storm of '78,
That's correct.
that one.
This one, the Edward Foster Road wall is an interesting wall. It was built first by the state around 1910. It's been repaired over the years, and there's a part of that that you're looking at there that had a new cap that was put on after the blizzard of '78. What's so concerning about that one, it's directly across from the sewer pumping station at the boatyard, and you know, when it goes, or in a big storm, it's gonna have a terrible impact on the boatyard. That wall, parts of that go back to 1910. The next one, Lighthouse Road seawall, that was originally built around 1907. We have some good records from the state of the date it was built.
David, you say Lighthouse, is that on Rebecca?
Lighthouse Road.
It is on Lighthouse Road.
That's Lighthouse Road. It's at the neck, so it's where the
Okay.
two
On the
streets.
harbor side.
No, it's on the ocean side.
Oh, all right.
Oh, so it's
When
near
you're-
Topman's
When you're
house?
heading out to the lighthouse, there's part of that street that's, it's Lighthouse Road, and then it splits off into the two. This is the neck area.
So Lighthouse Road goes to the island.
Yes.
All right.
So that one, you're looking at probably parts of that wall that date back to 1907.
Yeah.
Is that the last one, Bill, or is there one more? There's one more. Oceanside Drive, we think was probably built as a WPA project around 1933, something like that.
And that would probably be the same as,
No, I think that one may have had work later, but I mean, the original wall probably goes back to the 1920s, 30s. What's so concerning and alarming to us is the deterioration of these walls, and these are just four. We have other photographs that we didn't bring in tonight, but what's so concerning is that the damage is just so visible over the last year and a half, 2 years. Last week, I dropped off in the Selectmen's office background information with a lot more detail than we're going to be giving you tonight, because I know you have a very busy schedule tonight, so we don't want to take up any more time than we have to, but we tried to give you a comprehensive idea of what the issues are that we see and a potential way to fund this request. We're convinced that the minimum amount needed to start a serious repair program is $1 million. Right now, there are no funds to move forward. It's all been spent on emergency repairs. The proposed amount in the town's capital plan is $500,000 from what we understand for this coming fiscal year. It's clearly not enough to begin to tackle the problem. The 2011 seawall study shows we need repairs in excess of $52 million, and that goes back now a couple of years, so unfortunately it's probably even more than that. So even our request only scratches the surface, but we feel that that amount of money would certainly start to address the problem. Seawalls and other foreshore protection projects protect a vast amount of infrastructure, everything from roads, sewer lines, water lines, homes, and businesses. When a seawall fails, as they have in the last couple of years, all of those structures are subject to catastrophic damage. I know Jim Cantwell came in, and I said earlier when I was talking about the House vote, I'm just so impressed with the amount of work that he has invested, the amount of time that he's invested in this whole issue of seawall funding. He has come up with and was able to get legislation passed at the state level to provide funding for seawall repairs and dam replacement or tear downs, and that, we're just really impressed with that. So getting back to where I was here, how can we fund these repairs that we're talking about? Well, as I outlined in that document I gave you last week, we're suggesting that you seriously consider selling the Minot Fire Station. And I attached for you, I believe, the field card from the Board of Assessors showing the value of that particular property. That might net $400,000. I have had several discussions with Neil Duggan. There are some zoning issues there, for sure. But he doesn't feel that they are so tough that they can't be overcome. Somebody would probably be willing to pay in the vicinity of $400,000. The minor fire station hasn't been used in years and years. It's not gonna be used ever again as a fire station. We know that, so it's time to sell it.
Can I just jump in there, Dave,
Yes.
if you don't mind?
No.
Nancy, we have in our backup, could we do that?
It depends on what the original deed is for the fire station. There's restrictions under chapter 44, section 63. If it was a foreclosed property, it's a general fund revenue. But if it's a town-owned property, it depends on what the original deed was, whether or not you could use the revenue stream that you gained. In some cases, you have to retain that revenue to purchase more property.
Okay.
So, I was trying to find the deed for you, and the deed reference on the assessor's card is not accurate, which, you know, these were all taken over from manual records, and I wasn't able to find it. But it's possible, but there's also a possibility as well that you could sell the property and you would have to hold those funds until you purchased another property.
I just mentioned that because I thought I saw that, but that would be something from, Jim
Yeah.
Toomey to.
Yeah, because we'd have to research it anyways, because that would be, if you were going to sell that property, you'd want to know for certain what if there were any restrictions on it in the deed change before you could sell it to another owner.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt you.
and I don't know if Neil has dug into that aspect of it. He's obviously been taking a look at the zoning issues with it.
Right.
And he has been mulling that over, and his comment to me was, it's probably doable from his point of view.
Okay.
And he was quite intrigued with that idea as well. We're told that the town now generates surplus power from the wind turbine and the solar array. Maybe the town should consider selling that power and using some of the proceeds from that to help fund these repairs. Yeah, again, these are just suggestions. There may be other avenues of revenue as well. Use some of the money generated by the new sales tax. Many people voted for that tax with the idea it was going to be used for some infrastructure improvements. And what we're reading in the capital plan report for this year, it would indicate to us anyway that all that money has been spoken for, at least at the moment, or that's the proposal.
No, well, that's not accurate. It's gone to a capital surplus fund, so only a small portion of it have actually been allocated in the budget, so.
For the Economic Development Council
That's the
Commission.
only piece that's been-
25%, I believe, right. The rest of it would go into the stabilization fund, right. And lastly, there was mention in the capital plan improvement report for this year of purchasing a trolley that would run from the harbor down to Greenbush. That might be something nice to have, might be a nice amenity, but certainly I don't see how it can be justified, given the dire need of the seawall issues that we're facing. These are just 4 suggestions. I'll have a couple more comments, and I'd like to, I'm going to say one thing at this point in time. Well, it's one thing I missed here. Jim Cantwell has, as I said, spent a tremendous amount of effort to help the towns get funding. He had legislation that got passed, and on the first round of grants that were given recently, Marshfield got something in the vicinity of $500,000. Hull got $275,000 because they had shovel-ready projects, and as we understand it, they were partially funded. So they were ready to go. Scituate did not have any project ready to go. None that had been designed at the time of the applications last summer, and certainly they weren't funded. And Jim, you want to make any comments about what we're saying at this point?
Well, Jim, my question for you, do you think we didn't get money from the state because we didn't have a shovel-ready project?
First of all, there were 60 applications they could only fund. Out of the $20 million we had, they were only going to be able to fund, there were under, I think, 8 that got funded. Part of it was just not having enough money from the state. Part of it, when they were prioritizing, the gentleman who was involved with it happens to be here from Scituate. So I made a call to him right afterwards saying, look, one of the prime reasons we got this fund passed was to try to help both of my towns. Part of it, he said, it was just the incredible amount of competition, and part of it, I think they would say in the next round we would do better. But there's no doubt that there's going to be a new grant round in April. Absolutely no doubt that we would do better if we have a shovel-ready program ready to put right in. I think we have, our town has done a seawall report committee. I think David's been on it. But I think that my quick, I was going to talk about something else, but my quick thing would say is for money here, there's absolutely no doubt. We have, the more we can make available funds within our debt capacity, the better off we're going to be in trying to be able to get more matching funds from the state or grants. It was interesting walking in, because I just started writing down that Nancy Holt really never toots her own horn, but she was the one that gave me the idea for changing the law for borrowing a couple of years ago when she was treasurer collector over in Marshfield. And we changed the law because she basically wrote it. But we changed the law to allow towns to spread out their borrowing for seawall projects which couldn't be done before. We changed the law of creating a revolving fund. I just passed it a year and a half ago for $20 million. The reality is we have $1 billion in need statewide, and this unfortunately still is going to fall to the town to lead on it while we try to work out more money from the state. I do want to note that for this board, we had Deval Patrick come and visit here last February after one of our major storms, and as a direct result of meeting with you, he put in a request for $150 million in an environmental bond. That's still pending before us. We'll be debating it this summer. The only money I know right now that's available in April, there'll be another grant round, approximately another $8 to $10 million statewide that will be available, and I definitely would suggest that we do what we can. Our town here is in part at the forefront because of the great work that the board's done with David and the Seawall Committee. In part, we made a commitment of $200,000 a year. If we have some additional levy capacity, I would suggest that that would be something worthy of consideration, so that whatever we are able to put out there, I'll do my darndest to make sure we try to get matching funds from the state.
John?
Jim, I'm sorry that you came maybe a little too early, so I need to follow up on Tony's question, which is, and I'm not going to ask if the gentleman is here or the woman's here who made the decision from the state, because frankly, they're going to probably be reevaluating, but was it primarily due to the fact that we did not have a shovel-ready project that impacted our ability to get a grant? Because, you know, this is a philosophical discussion that we're going to have in town. The question being, do we fund seawalls through our operating and primarily through our capital plan, or do we as a town then decide to do it through a debt exclusion, the way that we're trying to, well, it's a little different with the enterprise fund with the water. But we do, like any other town, have $52 million plus to fix these walls. Whether it's 500,000 or $1 million, you know, my view has always been, let's take a look at what section of wall that we need to replace and go with that project. And if it's a 3 or 5 or 10 million or 2 million, whatever, that's the way we do it. So this is kind of an important discussion we have tonight, because ultimately, if that's what the state said, then we need to have a shovel-ready project going in order to tap into the $20 million, shall we say, loan program that the state's willing to offer.
And I think with Kevin may be able to give some insight about the last grant round.
Well, Kevin, do you want to come
Come on
up
up.
if you don't
Yeah.
mind?
John, do you think it's a loan or a grant?
Well, I think the program, it's a $20 million, it's a loan program where they loan you the money at like 0 interest or something extremely
Exactly.
minimal.
Both, so they can give an outright grant, which is what we've done the last round for both Hull and for Marshfield. They're outright grants. Some other towns got them as loans with low interest. So it could be either.
Can be both,
depending-
okay.
Depending upon, you know, the tremendous need, the public safety need. But they really, and again, in fairness, over 60 projects, the requests, we had $20 million total requests for over $80 million. So in part, we lost out because of, I think, the public safety
Size.
aspects for some of the others. But the other, it definitely does help, and this is where I was leaning over to
Yeah,
Kevin.
but I thought you were looking at the guy who actually made the decision. I'm like, he came too?
So I was trying to take some notes. So the first round was 20 million, second round's 8 to 10 million.
For seawalls, we will have, because they, administration finance, because the governor, there was $20 million total. That was for both seawall protection and repairs, $10 million for dam removal and repair. That first $10 million that was going to be allocated, the governor's folks added in another $10 million, again, in part from coming here. So first funds were expended, but we have another $10 million for seawalls alone starting this April. So that I know, absolutely $10 million that's going to be out there, whichever towns, and this is where I wanted Kevin to weigh in about what we can do from our application. And we're going to be working this summer trying to pass an environmental bond and making another $150 million available. I definitely, you know, it's up to you and to the town folks about voting about, you know, you get so many different priorities, water and other issues. I just want to make sure that we have ready to go with our engineering and with a consultant or whatever we hire, and we have our projects listed in priority, so that you guys tell me, say, Jimmy, here are our priorities, and I'll do my best to try to get funds for them. But my limited understanding, Kevin, you're gonna, I think, have more, was that if you would help, if we had, perhaps having a consultant that would help with some of the engineering and having it shovel ready, is that fair to say?
Yes, and if I
Please.
can jump in for a little bit, we do have an RFP out right now for looking over a couple sections of wall that we want to design and have ready for shovel-ready for when this comes out. It's also tied in to the RFP that we have one of these coastal experts who work strictly on seawalls, help prepare the grant application for that specific area. So that's in the process, and we hope for this next round that we have something all set and all ready. We have met with the grant coordinators. They're actually giving a class on it, I think, coming up Thursday at 11 o'clock at the Maritime Center, and they're going to be going into the different requirements that are required for these grants. You know, that's it in a nutshell. We've met with them. This first round was a little shaky. A couple of the projects that did go in were prepared by coastal zone specialists, and I think they're changing the criteria around. We'll know more, I believe, Wednesday or Thursday when this meeting is. One of the requirements were, I believe it was 25 points were awarded if you were an economically undeveloped area, and that was one section which helped Hull a lot. And I don't know how it helped Martha's Vineyard, but it did somehow. And
Jeez, you're not kidding.
$3 million worth.
3.6 million.
But that was ready to go in, the project was all set to go, and that's what we're looking for. In the meantime, since then, there's another round of grants coming out, the maximum's $500,000, and there was one that just closed last Friday that we applied for also. And this is kind of a green initiative, and what we've applied for there is along Glades Road, on the upper section of Glades Road. A lot of the sand over the years is washed out. We've put an application, and actually, I've talked to Jim about this just briefly, is adding more sand to that. The Army Corps at one point raised that grade up probably, I want to say probably 5 or 6 feet from what it was before, and that helped stabilize that wall, and all that sand's worn out. And this is an application, look for funds to try to bring some more sand in. It's called a green application, where you're not building the hard structures that we normally have. So that's something that we're going after and we're looking at.
Okay.
So, you know, we plan on going after the other one also with the 500. But we are looking at that. We're hoping to have a shovel-ready project for this next round of grants.
It's reachable, in your opinion?
I think so. We already have the RFP out. One of the issues we have with the state is just verifying, one of the things that they want is verifying ownership, that the town owns the land where the wall's going. And that's one of the things that we're backtracking, looking at right now on the areas that we're talking about.
Okay, all right. Anyone else, comments? Jim, you want to add anything else?
I think the only final comment, I wanted to thank Kevin for his work, because we've had successive grants because of the work that he's been doing with the Seawall Committee. Clearly, whatever the town can afford in our bond cap, whatever we can afford to put into this is only gonna help us when we're trying to match grants and the like, so. I know people you have decisions to make, the town meeting has decisions to make, but we have identified $50 million in needs for the town, and I'll do my best to get some statements to make sure we match whatever we come up with.
Dave, were you done? All right,
No, just a
okay, I
little
didn't
bit, just
think
a little
so.
bit
All
more.
right, okay.
So again, our position is, it would seem to us that by the 4 suggestions that we just put out, and the final one that I was talking about, I guess, I don't know if I finished, the proposed trolley that was in the capital plan for this year that would run from the harbor to Greenbush, that might be something nice to have, but in light of the terrible condition of the walls and the fact that they're getting worse by the year, we would expect that wouldn't be funded this year, and put the money that you'd save from that, which might be as much as $100,000, to fund the $500,000 extra that we're talking about. We're talking about $1 million. And if I'm getting what, I don't want to put words in Jim's mouth, but I've had a number of discussions with him, it seems as though that a town that has a shovel-ready project to go and has some funding set aside to do something is in a better position than a town that has just a shovel-ready project or something under study but no funding. Marshfield, remember, appropriated at that town meeting last year, I think it was $4.5 million for seawall work. they realized they were getting so far behind, they had to do something. I know Bill has something that he wants to add to what I've been talking about, so Bill, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Sean, you hit on one of the points tonight, and it's my buddy here, Dave Ball. 14 months ago, Dave called me and he said, do you know anything about this Bigot Waters information? That he had just received a phone call from one of his neighbors who received their flood insurance bill with a huge increase. And I had never heard of Bigot Waters, but in the last 14 months, we've learned a lot about it. And through Dave starting the ball rolling and getting the rest of us on board, he immediately called Jim and Carol Bowman, and naturally you fellas on the board. Everybody got together and we were able to put a lot of information together and public awareness about what Bigot Waters was about and the flood maps that we knew were incorrect. A couple of us had experienced the blizzard of '78, and the maps didn't reflect '78 at all. They were well overstated. So we're on the road to correction with that. Tonight we make the request for funding because we see the cement walls just crumbling. You can see the pictures. I don't think there's any denying it. If you look from the road, you may not see it, but if you get down on the beach, you're going to see the walls just falling apart. We've had 3 failures in the last 4 years of the walls. And those are walls that were rated to be fair. The poor ones somehow escaped because of the way the storm came in or whatever, but they're waiting to disappear. If Neil Duggan were to see that kind of cement in a house, he would condemn it. He wouldn't allow anybody to live in it because it's too dangerous. And those walls are protecting our town. Not only the houses, but they're protecting the roads, the gas pipes, the water pipes, the sewer plant, and the public safety of all the individuals who have to go out there and try to rescue people who get trapped in it. It's a public safety issue, and we need to fund it. And lastly, we request that the funds be designated to repair or replace the seawalls and not be used to absorb the 25% match for the FEMA money that may be coming in the future. Because most of the FEMA money was designated for stone revetment or road repair, and no money at all for seawalls. And the walls just need to be repaired sooner than later. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Final thing I'd like to add, Sean, is that homes and businesses in the coastal areas provide well over 25% of the town's tax base. And summer tourism pumps in probably somewhere between $15 and $20 million into the local economy. That's not going to continue if the waterfront starts to deteriorate to a point where it's not fixable anymore. We're at a crossroads. We need to start funding this foreshore protection now, or we're going to face a very bad future.
Anyone else?
Well, I think we just a few things. You know, the town has allocated a number of dollars over the last 3 years to seawalls. There is $500,000 in the budget, and there has been, and that's what we talked about last year when you came before us, that, you know, $500,000 was the number. And we did that again this year, and we see it as a priority to work on. It's a big, big problem, as Jim mentioned, and as we all know. The revenue, I mean, you're not just asking for $1 million. I assume you're asking for $1 million every year until it's fixed.
Not necessarily. Let's say that we have $1 million to use this year, and the town is able to get some grant money from Jim's legislation. And maybe it's, say, $800,000 next year, just to pull a number out of the year.
Right, but it's a large number in perpetuity until we deal with the $60 million problem.
But not necessarily
Until you catch up
until you
with
start
the
catching up.
defects that we have.
I don't think we want to give you guys the assumption that we're gonna be sitting here another year saying we want another $1 million. We may be, but maybe we'll luck out, and maybe we'll get some grant money from the state. But we need to get started.
You're gonna be here next year.
Well,
I'll
maybe
bet.
not.
I'll bet. I mean, you were here last year, you were here the year before that, you'll be
Right.
here next year too.
Right. But
I
if
mean,
you
we just
remember-
can't deceive what the issue is. there's a problem here, and it's gonna be, it's not something that you're gonna say, let's not do a trolley program, and that'll solve the problem. You know, this is something that's a big, big picture problem.
Absolutely
that
is.
we need to figure out, and John brought up a good point, that this is something that, you know, is probably not gonna be solved through the operating budget. You know, we're chipping away at it at a good chunk as best we can in the operating budget, but it's probably gonna be something that's a debt exclusion question at some point in time to see if the town has the appetite to attack this thing as strongly as you want. So, the one other thing that you mentioned, Bill, was that, you know, the FEMA money. You know, we do have to pay 25% of FEMA projects. It's still money that's going towards seawalls, and that's, I can't remember the number, I think it's like
8.3 total, and then 25% of the 8.3.
Right, so there's $2 million that we have to come up with to get $8 million worth of work done on seawalls. It may not be that seawall, but it is
Any
but it is foreshore protection.
It
You know,
is. It's
so-
all
and it is
stone-
another
it's all
area of
stone
town.
revetment. But the reason we picked these four images here is that these are all walls that have dramatically gotten worse in the last month, or last year.
We know, we've seen them, we
Yeah,
walk by
and-
them,
Right, so, I mean, the FEMA money's gonna go mostly to road, well, some road money, from what I understand, most of it's gonna be going to revetments around the cliffs, which is good, it's great.
Right.
But you've got 7 miles of seawalls, too.
right, but my point is, it's still part of the foreshore protection plan. It's still 2-point-something million dollars that the town has to come up with. And as you know, money is the issue. So we've got to figure out how to attack this as more of a long-term project, not just you coming here for another $500,000 in this annual town meeting, and not something that's going to be solved by taking excess power from a windmill one year or a trolley program one year to solve it.
No, we're just using those as, for example,
Oh, I
how
know.
to fund it this year.
Yeah, I know you. So I guess that's the issue, and I think we have numbers here that we've put $2.7 million into seawalls since '11. So there's, you know, there is an investment in the town, and the town is aware of the problem, and, you know, it's just a matter of finding a way to fund it. And grants are great. You know, loans aren't as great because interest rates are so low right now anyways, that that's not a big deal. But, you know, I love the fact that Jim's working on it, and you guys are working for grants also. That's, you know, we're gonna need some assistance above the local level, I guess is what my point is, to get these walls to a,
Absolutely
you know, to a
correct.
point that we need it.
Just, you all set?
Yeah.
Just one question, Dave. How much a lineal foot? If you, Dave or
Kevin can answer that better than I would say a lot of these seawalls could probably be repaired for $2,500 a lineal foot, but Kevin, we probably want to have something to say about that.
They could vary from 2 to 4, you know, 2 to 4,000. You have to look at the scope of them. If you go down Surfside Road,
Build
you
new,
might have them.
build new. 2 to 4, I
2
mean,
to
that's.
4,000, I'm gonna guess. In, if I can, I wanna bring up 2 points if I can have a second.
Okay, yeah.
And I'll be real quick. Jim's been great giving us information on where these grants are going and how to go after them and everything else, and letters of support, and that's been fantastic, a big help. Secondly, some of the FEMA money, although FEMA wasn't willing to pay for work on the walls, what they are willing to do is replace some of the stone revetment at the bottom of these walls and repair them to help them from being undermined. So that's just one thing to look at. It's not, they wouldn't strictly do the concrete. They were saying that's a hard structure that they weren't gonna take.
But they'll put the.
But we did put in first stone underneath. And we haven't heard anything back from them, so we don't know where that's going.
I will say that's a concern. The concern is that, the fact is that we're going to have potentially $8 million worth of foreshore protection that needs to be attended to and replaced or fixed. And the walls don't fall into that category, I realize that. Because of the age of the walls, they are crumbling, you know, various sections, and I think the integrity of the walls is something that's internal that we really can't see within. So you have a very good point, Dave, that you're raising. I think, Tony, you're right. We have to look at this from what I look at from a fair perspective, because one of the worst things I'd hate to see is the town say, okay, we're going to come up with $2 million in order to pay for the $8 million, you know, FEMA fix, and then everybody turn around and those people who live on the cliff say, well, I'm not going to spend any more money because I've got a great revetment around my cliff, and you know what? We don't need seawalls right now. So I think you raise a valid point on that. I will say that, you know, at this point, I'm not convinced this is the best way to attack it, Dave. We've met, I've talked to you about it. The fire station, we talked about. I know I approached Neil. Neil told me the same thing, have to go through a special permit process through the zoning board to see whether or not undersized lot could be converted to residential. It's in a residential zone to begin with, so that's certainly something that could possibly happen. But the bigger issue was the issue of Chapter 44, which I found about on Thursday. And then I'd be curious to see what the deed says, what the deed references. So that could be a problem. And then the trolley, I know we talked about maybe it is an access as far as, a nicety for the town, but I think if you talk to the businesses, they probably love the thought of being able to have a trolley go. I know the one thing I'd mentioned, since we don't have GATRA because of the cost, that's something I wouldn't mind seeing help out maybe with being able to travel to the various Wheeler Park, Lincoln Park, and so on and so forth, as well as connecting North Scituate. So I do see a benefit potentially in it. So these are the priorities, as you very well know, that we have to face. So at this point, I'm not sure. Next week we'll vote on it. But I do think that my position has always been, let's take a section, find out what it needs to be dealt with. The one in front of Steve Burlow's house and Rick's, and say, that's on Lighthouse. That might be the span that you're talking about right here.
That's the one right there.
That's it. I'm like, that one's been a problem for 4 years straight. We've talked about it. And I'm like, let's find out what the cost is, and that's the project, and let's get the numbers to start repairing it. And likewise, go to other stretches. I know, Bill, you mentioned the one on Edward Foster. That one's a little bit more complicated because it's a private wall. And we've had those discussions in the past as between a public wall, private wall. But I will say, I've talked to Dave about whether or not the town might be able to get an easement and be able to buy the land in front or buy an easement for a beach, take over the possession of the wall, and then the town has to deal with the wall, which I think some of the homeowners might be open to, and there's a benefit to the town, and I certainly think that's a good thing. So it's a little more complicated, but I don't want you to walk away thinking, I'm not sure how we're going to vote on it. Next week will be the date, but it's an issue that the board's tackling, and I don't want you to feel like we're giving it short shrift, because we're not. It's a serious issue. There's no doubt. Every storm we find, like the recent one with the cap falling off over on Turner and Oceanside, it's just indicative of the condition of the walls, the age of the walls. So,
One thing I want to make the board aware of is that if we were sure that the $500,000 amount that is talked about in the capital plan is going to happen, and that it's not going to be just set aside to pay for the FEMA match, it's going to truly be put towards starting a repair program, then we would probably reduce the amount of our request to $500,000 at town meeting. We're talking a total of $1 million, not $1 million plus 500 from the town. So please keep that in mind when you're taking a vote. But we would need assurances that that $500,000 that's going to be voted in the capital plan is not just bankroll somewhere to pay for the FEMA match later. And just one other thing. Kevin has told us in our Seawall Committee meetings that FEMA would not discuss with the town funding any of the repairs for seawalls that were falling apart because they couldn't be shown that the town couldn't show that they had been damaged in that storm. The comment apparently from FEMA was they were in terrible condition. We're not paying for that because it wasn't one particular storm that did it. Old age did it.
Interesting. Any other comments?
Yeah, just a quick one. I know it's a tough battle. Money's tight, all of those things. But what I don't want is I don't want a board to be sitting here 20 years from now looking at the walls like we're looking at the water pipes, saying, why didn't we get a program in place and start to do something? I don't know if 500,000 is enough. I don't know if $1 million is enough. I don't know what the number is. But the idea is that I want everybody to understand that this isn't for people that live near the walls. You can talk to experts, and the infrastructure could be heavily affected by lack of protection. People in the West End are directly related to it. They may not live near the walls, they may never go to the beach, but they are in fact related to the problems that we have in the town. So I just want everybody to understand, however the board does vote, that we do have a serious issue and it affects the entire town. That's all I wanted to add.
Okay. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Bill.
Speak for
And Kevin, too.
themselves.
Next week, you're going to vote, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Well, we'll be looking for the right
Well, all right, okay, Dave. All right, thank you very much, Bill, Dave.
Thank you.
Kevin, you want to stay right up there? Does Sean want to join you?
I think so.
I have to stay here.
If we could just try to get caught up, we're running a little late on our schedule.
Why don't you take those
I know.
posters home? Okay. And then I'll catch up with you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Just put them over in Rick's seat.
I suggested mine.
Well, if he came here expecting it.
Jim, did you want, would you take us to take a 2-minute break for, or without Rick?
Or another time.
Oh, another time. All right, okay, that's fine. All right. That's right.
Jim.
Thank you, I appreciate
You
it.
stop by there yet?
I'm gonna go now.
Next agenda item is an update and a discussion of the water main project
Couldn't even,
with Mr. Cafferty. Yep. And Sean McCarthy. Sean, thanks for coming in tonight. Everyone's, as you guys know, Kevin's in Al's position, Sean's in Kevin's position.
everybody's jumping. Congratulations.
Everyone's moved up, yeah.
Excited about it.
Okay, well, this is a very exciting project. It's almost as exciting as Seawalls. But this is the other hidden item that we have in the roadways is the water lines and the water replacement. We're moving pretty quick on this, and what we have is just an update of where we are now with the water lines themselves. And I'd like to go over some dates with everybody first. On 3/6 is gonna be our first water bid opening. It's gonna be our water bid 1A, which I'll get into and explain where that's gonna be. The second date is gonna be 3/11. That's gonna be for our water bid 1B. On 3/18, we're gonna have a public meeting at Pier 44 for any residents that would like to find out what's going on and how their streets are gonna be affected. That'll be at Pier 44 at 7 o'clock?
6, I believe.
6 o'clock, I believe. It'll be
What day, on the
6
18th?
Yeah.
On the 18th,
It's Tuesday.
on a Tuesday. And we'll have a couple hours there. Anybody has any questions, answers, we'll provide them any information we can have. And we'll have a good idea where we are. We'll have 2 of the water projects opened at that point. And then our third bid opening is gonna be for Glades Road, which is gonna be on 3/20. I can start off with the first phase is gonna be Phase 1A. And with the water projects, it's gonna be Porter Street, Harborview Road, Harbor Heights Road, Allen Place, Greenfield Lane, Ford Place, Otis Place, Beal Place, a portion of Hazel Ave, Meeting House Lane, a portion of Country Way, from Ford Place to Pin Oak Drive and McDonald Terrace.
Kevin, can I just jump in?
Yes,
Like Ford Place, McDonald Terrace, those, places in Greenbush, weren't those lines replaced when we did the sewer project in Greenbush?
No.
They were not? All right, okay.
that's according to the water department's records, they were not replaced.
I know we did up on the cliffs. And I'm not saying that's even here, but I know we did it then, and, all right, okay. Maybe it was
And we
just-
did them at Squashka Pond, we replaced a lot of the water that was
Okay.
in.
So are these the red things on the map
These are
there?
actually the red things on the map. These sections in here, some of these sections right here.
They're there and over to the left.
And are we missing a couple on this list?
Not for Phase 1A.
Okay.
So it's the far left by the reservoir.
In this area here, these streets here, and right over here. That's the Country Way, Ford Place, and everything in here. I believe that's Greenfield and Meeting House.
Yeah.
And then this is down around Front Street. Some of those small water lines are really, really old. And those are being replaced
And
also.
can I just jump in again? Isn't that an area that needs to be sewered, that's been discussed, that it might be next? I know we're gonna go back to the drawing board, but I thought that might be, there's a lot of spaghetti lines, I know that in that area that we've granted.
There are a lot of spaghetti lines,
All right.
and there is talk about.
This is stuff
doing
that they, Weston Sampson's doing this, they know all this, right?
To a point, yeah, they did our sewer study, and
Right.
they're aware of that.
Right.
But this was for the elimination of the old cast iron pipes, so.
Sorry, go ahead.
Phase 1B would be going around the lighthouse, which is this section right here. We've got quite a few breaks. I think 2 years ago, we had 7 breaks there in 1 year. That's a pretty rough pipe. That area is sewered. And then we've got a large section of Hadley Road, and that's a section of Van Vinyl Road. And that's Rebecca Lighthouse Hadley Road from First to Jericho and Vinyl Road. And, okay. Our third area that we're gonna be doing is on Glades Road, and that's gonna go from basically the post office down to the end of Glades Road, down where Tilden Place is. And part of the reason we kind of jumped that to the top, it is old cast iron pipe, we know, and it's kind of at the dead end of the system, but we have FEMA funds to replace that roadway, so we want to replace the water line prior to doing the roadway over.
Can you put any dates on these phases? You know, and I won't hold you to it, but if you had to put a date on
We're gonna hold
1A.
Sean to it.
Yes.
What?
I said, we're gonna hold Sean to it.
Okay, well, if you're gonna hold Sean to it, that's fine. Which Sean? Is it, we hadn't specified. What we're trying to do is, we've phased 1B so that the first section that they do is go out and go around the lighthouse, and hopefully it completed by July 4th. That's what we kind of put for a deadline. That's gonna be some tough work, because they're gonna have to run a temporary water line around the point, and we're always worried about freezing when we're doing that, so we're gonna have to kind of watch the weather. The other area we wanted to do is, as we went down Ann Vinyl Road, is hopefully school's out at that point. We're trying to schedule it around school being out and being able to open that up. And those are the key dates that we have. With these contracts, it's gonna depend on who gets awarded the contract and how the contractor comes out and decides to handle the work. If they're gonna come out with 2, 3 crews, or if they're gonna work with 1 crew and meet the timeline configurations that are set forth.
John?
Any of these, and I think you may have mentioned, and I apologize, are any of these streets that we're looking at potential phases for future sewage connection? All right, and is there a contingency plan potentially if we're gonna be digging into those roads? Because at the end of it, it's gonna be a brand-new road. It's not just gonna be half road, right?
To some extent, in Country Way, that's a decent road. We're going to look and see if we can patch that road without redoing the entire road, and maybe do 1/2 of it. And bring it over. We'll do the best we can with that, so we don't have the cost of redoing the entire road.
Okay.
That's a fairly updated road, and,
This is,
All right, that was the one thing. The other question, the reason for saying it is if we're gonna be digging into the road's within 4 to 5 years, you know, the unevenness of the road becomes a nightmare again and turns into, you know,
well, then, what we'll
potholes
do,
and everything else.
what we'll do at that point is we'll look at it and evaluate it, and if one of these roads is going to be sewered in the future, or we think in the next 5 years, maybe we don't give it the Cadillac effect, we give it, you know, the Chevy effect, and we do a slight grind and overlay and make it work.
I've got a Chevy.
I've
There's
got
nothing
3 of
wrong with my
them, so-
Chevys. Come on. The second question I have is the phasing in. I know that probably you don't have an answer. Like, if they're gonna have 1 or 2 crews, and when they're gonna attack it, are they gonna attack it aggressively, or are we gonna have, and you know it's gonna happen, people are gonna start complaining about the conditions of the roads, their cars, and everything else, and the sooner it gets attacked and the sooner it gets done, the better it's gonna be, so at least we have an ability to.
And I can't sugarcoat it either, because traffic's gonna be tough getting around town. A couple of years ago, we had Tilden ripped up in Stockbridge Road, and it was messy, and it's gonna be worse this year. And, you know, but that's the aggressiveness we're going after these. We're trying to take them as quick as we can.
I have no issues. Thanks.
Okay, anything else?
so just that this is 6.3 miles of water
That doesn't
line.
include Glades, though. Glades isn't included in that list. So Glades is,
Quarter of a mile.
Glades almost another mile, a mile and a
Almost 7.
quarter, I think, so. We're right around 7, what we're shooting for.
Good.
And so that's 1/3 of the project that could be completed by this summer. And then
Late fall,
late fall.
give us a little time.
So,
And then the paving, what'll happen is there'll be temporary patches on the roadway, and then the paving and follow the following year. If the road holds up well with the temporary patches, it might be a condition where we let it go and we don't pay for the asphalt in the contract. We hold back on that, and if it's a road that might be sewered in the next 3 or 4 years, we try to get by.
So you wait a year in order to let the
We
road
let it
settle?
settle anyways. We have to let it all settle out so that we're not paving a road and having it, losing it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to your next project,
Next project.
the Squashkit Pond, the beach stone.
Is it an update on the beach stone, or is it the award of the contract for the beach stone? I'm sorry. I don't remember.
Yes, we have to vote to bid an award.
Okay, yep.
Do you have the bids at all? I don't have.
Basically, after
Packet's totally incomplete.
After the storm, right after Christmas, we had a lot of damage to the berm at Musquashkett Pond. where a lot of the stone was knocked into the pond itself. We met with the state geologist and coastal zone management out there. We're not allowed to go into the pond and just pull the stone out and throw it back up on the berm. We have to supplement the stone on the berm and rebuild the berm in that direction. We're looking at different options. Then we might be able to get it classified as an engineering beach for the future so that we would be able to do something like that. But this contract here is the supply of the stone to put on the berm and reestablish the berm and supplement the berm stone that's out there now. And we did it as a per ton because we're not exactly sure how much stone we're gonna use and how much we'll be able to use out there. But it's a specialty stone. It's almost like it's like a river stone, they call it. It's a rounded stone. It's not your typical stone that you go to a quarry and they blast and you get this jagged stone. It's an actual rounded stone, like a beach stone. And the way I was explained to it by the guys from Coastal Zone Management is it goes in, it comes back out and moves, and it's kind of a moving dune. And that's what protects that area.
Just like the stone on the sea wing of the junior high school building, same thing. That's river stone. Same thing.
The what? The stone
The-
where?
The ballast on the Gates sea wing is river stone.
Really?
Yes.
On the roof?
Yeah, that's correct. So,
Let's take the roof, when we take that down, let's use the stone from there, how about that?
Move the Board of
Please.
Selectmen award the contract for beach stone to Reed Custom Soils LLC in the amount of $25 per ton for repair of the berm of Musquashnet Pond for a minimum of a delivery of 1,500 tons.
a motion and a second.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Right. Finally, the Surfside Road restoration work. Kevin?
Chief, remember that?
Sean?
This is kind of an outline, it's underneath here, of what the berm is and what's happened to the berm. If you see here, on this side here is Surfside Road, at the very end of Surfside Road, and then that's the end of Manlot Road right there. This section of the berm was pretty much severely damaged and knocked back into the pond. And then we have a section here that used to be about 10 feet higher than it was before, that's kind of pushed into the pond. And then we have a section right here that's been damaged significantly by it also.
Man Hill Road?
Man Hill.
Man Hill
Yeah, okay.
Extension, yeah, down at the end of Man Hill Extension, down there Stanton Lane in that area.
Okay,
North of,
Signed?
right,
So St. Francis's.
yeah.
right.
So right down the end of Surfside Road. So if you get a chance, these are different pictures. They're kind of hard to see now, but it shows how the berm is flattened out and it's pushed out. And this is the area that we're going to be looking to add the supplemental stone to and do it. We spoke about it before maybe about a month ago, that we were looking to possibly get in there and do something. But since then, it's been nothing but ice and it's a frozen mass out there. We can't do much until it thaws out.
Kevin, this is just south of the previous article, the previous agenda item, isn't it?
The location.
No,
of
the stone, you just allocated for that
Right,
contract, will go
right.
into here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, right.
Yes.
But I just thought it was up a little further by, used to be Dave Garraway's house there at the end, the last one.
Dave Garraway's house is right over here,
right.
or his old house was right there.
Right.
So you can actually see where a lot of the stone's been damaged over the years with the storms.
And who provoked getting this done? Is this conservation? How did this get brought to our attention?
We went out and walked it and saw the
So
damage.
you just went and checked?
And during
it?
one of the storms, I saw the waves, Sean and I each did, were overtopping the wall, and they were flooding into the pond. And, we went out and walked it and saw the damage.
It's been reduced since I grew up just south of there. It was quite a mound for years and years, and it is flattened out a lot.
So was it man-made?
Must
have been.
Oh, I don't know. It was always there since I was a kid. I just
What'd you do out there?
walked the beach. Yes, right. Actually, you go sea clamming at the bottom of Man Hill Road if you want. So there's a little tidbit.
Well, a lot of Man Hill Road is all in this area. The stone's all
Right.
blasted in by the roadway and everything else.
Years ago, the homes down there had, there were 3 or 4 homes, summer cottages, and they had a steel sheathing, just like that's at the town pier, that protected those homes for years and years, and it's finally gone. But All right, that's not a vote, we're just a
No, it's
discussion,
just an
Kevin,
update to let everybody know where it is, and, you know, we've had calls from residents asking if we're gonna get out there, and that's the plan we had allocated. I believe there was a vote for buying another $25,000 to $30,000 worth of stone in case we needed it for emergency situations, so that we could get out there and do some repairs. If we had a big storm coming up the coast, we could at least get something
So
there.
how do you get out there? Do you take an excavator, or you take a front-end loader?
What
or-
we do is, our plan right now is to, for this area over here on Surfside Road, we would bring a loader and a dozer out, maybe two loaders, and we would feed the bulldozer with the loader, and the trucks would come in, dump the stone, would feed it with the loader to where the bulldozer is. And then we'd do the same on the other side.
So
maybe
do we
make a
rent the
road.
dozer? Is that what are we gonna rent the bulldozer, or?
We'd rent the bulldozer, and we might have to rent a couple loaders to get some big heavy equipment in there, as opposed to, we've got a couple smaller loaders, but it might be worth, we might save more time.
Put the,
getting a
put
bigger
the
piece of equipment in
time on the other equipment, yeah. Just curious.
So we have a general bid for equipment, would try to facilitate our equipment bid and use that.
Oh, John, when are you gonna do that? I'm sorry, in July, June?
We believe so. I believe there's storm-related money coming at the special town meeting, and some of the funds would fund the stone repairs to this area here.
If you could keep us informed of the projects as they go forward, to be honest with you, you know it's gonna happen. People are gonna buttonhole us and complain about this and that and that. At least if we know it's coming, and plus we can say that when the projected end date is, I'm sure then they'll be
Yeah,
much
no,
more
we
happy,
can
that's all.
update you, and there'll be plenty of complaints with the water when that happens, because we're gonna be shutting more gates and turning more gates on than you've ever imagined, so I'll just forewarn you now
The
on that.
disruption of traffic.
With brown.
So
You
we
mean
just
people
give
get a lot
Sean's
of
number?
brown
What's
water
Sean's
on
number?
Yeah, most definitely, because
What's Sean's number, so we can have him call them?
we'll put a cell phone number out on the next.
That's good, put it on the
so-
website.
But there will be brown water, and, you know, we can't sugarcoat it, but that's what you gotta do to fix it.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
We're
guys.
a little behind, and thank you all for their patience for sitting. All right, next, we're on to our budget hearings, a discussion and a review, starting with South Shore Vocational School. I know Mr. Manning's not here. Jim, thank you.
You wanna
Mr.
postpone that?
Mr. Chairman, excuse me for not telling you before the meeting. Sheila did call me and tell me that Dr. Hickey also had a conflict and would not be able to attend.
Okay.
So you wanna postpone that to next week?
Yes, if we could, if that's all right with everyone else. All right, moving on to the school committee. Again, thanks for being so patient there.
Well, I learned a lot tonight. Seawalls and berms and.
Try to save this. Paul, how are you?
Great, how are you?
Brenda, how are you? How's everyone?
We have Rich here too.
Oh, there, he's so small, I didn't even see him sit
He
back
snuck
there.
in. I'll just make a few general comments, and then we can entertain some questions about our budget. You all have received our packet of information. We worked very closely with the advisory committee this year. We had a couple of meetings where we talked about the presentation of it, and so this is kind of what we agreed upon. It's sort of a historical look at the school budget by numbers, and it also gives you some of the narrative behind the requests that we're making, so you get a sense of both the numbers as well as the reasons behind it. We also shared with you our new district improvement plan that's called Scituate Educational Experience. That's been worked on over the past year and was adopted by the school committee. We're in year one of that plan. I'm a big believer in that an educational plan should drive any budget. And in this particular case, we were very conscious of our educational plan and ensuring that the money that we're spending is using to support that plan. It's a collaborative approach we use. We involve a lot of people in the process, starting really way back into October in building this budget. And we use a zero-based approach. And what that simply means is that we build up our needs from zero. That includes every part of our program. So it's not a historical budget where you look at what did you spend last year, and we're going to spend 3% more next year. What we look at is every single request, every single need, and we rank every single one, and we look at it in comparison to our current budget. So that's the process we use. As you can see on page 2 by the numbers, again, we're showing you a 5-year historical look. This is a 4.4% increase that we're looking for. That is the number that has the Financial Forecast Committee right now has said would be available for the schools to spend. Again, that's still a forecast, but that's what we're using as the number. It's essentially a little under 1.4 million, or 4.5, a little under 4.5%. The majority of our costs are personnel. We are a people business. We have 85% of our overall costs are personnel costs. So when we look at any budget increase, it mostly is going to be personnel in most cases. Our contractual increases in this budget account for about $1.1 million, and that was a 1.5% cost of living adjustment for fiscal year 15. We're in the 3rd year of our contract with our unions, so it's a 1.5% cost of living adjustment. It is a step and level changes that might be made. And so the majority of the $1.4 million increase, 1.1 of it, is going towards our contractual increases. The remaining $300,000 is going towards new requests, and I'll just touch on some of those new requests right now and the reasons behind them. One of them is the funding of a school resource officer, at least 80% of the cost of a school resource officer. Scituate Public Schools is one of the few school districts in Massachusetts, and particularly on the South Shore, that does not have a school resource officer. As a matter of fact, there are some school districts here on the South Shore that have more than one school resource officer. The SRO has been a program that's been in place in many districts for the last 10 years. The whole nature, obviously, of school security and safety has changed, unfortunately, certainly since Columbine, and the direction has gone in having school resource officers. We have not had one in Scituate. We have had a DARE officer. A DARE officer is an individual who teaches a specific curriculum to a specific grade level and does not necessarily deal with what a school resource officer would deal with. So what we have had is many conversations with the town administrator and the chief of police, even going back to when Brian was in place and talking about the need. We're all in agreement that we have a need for this position, and what we're looking to do is fund, the school budget is looking to fund 80% of this cost because the officer will be in our schools 80% of the time. Basically 180 days of their work year would be spent in schools. So that's our, one of our top requests is to fund that particular position. And again, like I said, it's 80% of that. We're also looking to hire 2 part-time bus drivers. It's a very small amount of money, but I think it's important to note is that we're moving in a direction of trying to change our bus tiers. Scituate currently has a 4-tiered bus route system. We start with the high school, go to the middle school, and then have 2 sets of elementary school bus routes. We would like to eventually get to a 2-tiered system, which would be ideal for us to get to. Unfortunately, that is a little costly because we don't have enough buses to do that. We have enough buses to do 3 tiers. It would require us to hire 2 additional drivers. We believe the cost will be offset by the savings in gasoline, because by doing 3 tiers instead of 4, you're not going over that same route 4 times, you're doing it 3 times. We haven't factored that into the budget here, but because we're not quite certain what that savings will be, but we believe the cost of the drivers is 15, the savings will probably be about 15.
Can I just interrupt you for 1 second?
Go right ahead, anytime. Yeah.
How would you accomplish that? Would you bring high school, middle school students at the same time?
Yes.
Or would you move your elementaries all to the no longer early and late starts?
Right, the plan right now is to begin it with elementary and high school at the same time. They'd be riding the same buses as they do in many districts on the South Shore, that they're on the same buses. So the high school and middle school.
Elementary? Oh,
No,
middle
high school
school.
and middle school, not elementary.
John, if it
Yeah.
turns out that we're going to be going 6, 7, 8, then a
Yeah.
6th grader is going to be riding with potentially a
Correct.
11th or
Correct.
12th
Yeah,
grader?
Yeah, not unusual. Matter of fact, this is actually one of the districts, a few districts that I've worked in where that hasn't happened. And as a former high school principal for a number of years, I also worked as middle school administrator. I'll tell you that the buses that have middle school students and high school students on the same bus are the best behaved buses we have. The reason being is that the middle school students, an 8th grader with nobody above them, older than them, behaves in a certain way,
Sure.
shall we say, and if there's a 9th or 10th grader on that bus, They just want to get their sleep in the morning, and that eighth grader is going to behave differently. You have a lot less incidents when you put the students together than when they're separate. So, and it makes better use of your buses, too. If you look at our high school buses, particularly in the afternoon, when they're leaving our high school, there's 4, 5, 6 kids on those buses because of sports. Kids are staying after school. We're really wasting a lot of money there in terms of going.
Just going back to your first mention, the SRO, I
Yep.
think, is a great thing. The only thing I'm concerned about is the DARE program no longer going forward. And the reason I say that is that obviously we have some other issues with a lot of problems with drugs and alcohol, and we're one of the first communities to have the DARE program. And I understand the SRO is going to be spending probably predominantly most of his or her time at the high school. I would think the DARE, providing it's not an impact on school curriculum, if we're able to maintain the DARE program, would we be able to do that? Because the cost primarily doesn't come from the school or the town, for the most part. It comes from a lot of the.
We don't fund that. That strictly comes out of the police budget, and I guess they do get some funding from outside sources, I believe the Rotary.
So with the school, and I'm only asking this, and it's rhetorical, because I know you can't answer it.
Right.
I know some of the members are here, but if the DARE program were to continue to be funded, would the school committee and yourself be amendable to it? I think it's a good thing, and I just was curious to see.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly not opposed to that. I mean,
Okay.
again, we're, the DARE program has been in Scituate for a long time. The DARE officer has been, I believe, somebody's told me, I don't know if this is a fact, the longest-standing DARE officer in the state of Massachusetts. The DARE program has a lot of success. It builds good relationships. It works with a particular group of students. And obviously, there's been a lot of things that have happened in Scituate since DARE came on board. And one of the big things that's happening now is the effort of Scituate Facts.
Correct.
Which is making, hopefully a huge inroads in this problem in the schools and in the community. So, we do have other support pieces, but to answer your question, again, I'm certainly not going to turn away from something that, is beneficial in some way. So, the big area of increase for next year, and again, it fits right into our Scituate educational experience, is the increase in number of special education teachers. We're looking to add 4 special education teachers, 1 at each of the elementary schools. We have begun a program here of co-teaching where we're adding more special education teachers, working with regular education teachers with the goal of trying to ensure that we keep students in Scituate and not having to send them out for costly out-of-district tuitions. And if you look at the cost of special education tuitions in this budget over the last 5 years, we're actually spending less next year than we spent 5 years ago, which is remarkable for out-of-district expense, because that really, an out-of-district tuition can run you 6 figures and more, sometimes over $200,000, plus transportation sometimes. Every year. Right. So when you look at what we've been able to do by trying to educate more of our students in-house, develop more programming, the special education teachers, introducing those teachers into the classroom in a co-teaching model, helps to keep students in-house. So that's the goal. Again, it's a benefit to the students. They'd rather be here, the parents rather have them here, and it's less expensive. So overall.
Yeah. John, has that actually happened, though? Have we actually implemented programs? Because the people that we spent the 6 figures on are typically very needy.
Yes.
The school blind or some of these other things. I don't think we have
It
a
has
blind
happened.
program
We've
here.
begun a social emotional program at the high school. We're starting one at Gates next year, and the year after that, it'll be in the elementary schools. And oftentimes, social emotional disabilities are some of those that you can't manage in-house. Some of those are the ones that go out. And not only are we looking at being able to keep students from going out, but actually bringing some back.
Kids and make money.
We've got 3 or 4. We got 3 or 4 current students that we have that are out of district that potentially could come back within the next year or so. Again, the whole idea is to try to build programming that keeps them here. Now, there are some disabilities that you get 1 or 2 of them. It's not cost effective to be able to create a program for those students. But the more students we can keep in house, whether some of the disabilities around autism, social emotional disabilities, keeping those students in house can help to lower costs And again, the majority of parents want their kids in Scituate Public Schools.
Now, have you also opened up programs to other communities?
Yes, we
Is that
have.
what you were just saying, that you would,
Right.
you know, if we have 4 kids in a program and there's someone in Marshfield or Norwell that needs the use, then they can come to Scituate for the
And we
program?
actually collect in revenues from other districts, about $400,000, correct? Somewhere in the area of tuitions of $400,000 of students who are coming in. And obviously, it's not costing us $400,000 because we already have the program here. So we're actually, it's revenue, it's shown on one of the end pages, we're looking at other revenues. We earn about $400,000 in tuitions from other districts. So Hingham is sending some students here. We have
So
some
that
Weymouth
doesn't
and
offset
Yep.
the sped stuff and the circuit breaker, that goes in?
It goes into the fund. It helps, obviously, it's part of our cost. When you look at our actual budget, you know, the town will vote, you know, this $32.8 million. Our budget is actually more like $36 million. When you look at fees, when you look at grants, when you look at, you know, other revenues that we raise, we're raising over $3 million, close to $4 million in other revenue sources. So it's, you know, if those weren't there, those other revenue sources weren't there, if grants dried up, if, you know, other revenue sources dried up, we may still need to fund the program, so it would force us to make cuts in other areas. So those other revenues are significant to offset, you know, some of this. I mean, you know, we'll just talk about that for a minute. I mean, we look at every year, we're looking at fees. You know, what fees could we potentially reduce or eliminate? And, you know, that's always a difficult challenge, because once you put a fee in, one of the hardest things is getting it out, because you now have built in a revenue source that you're going to say, okay, I have to take that revenue source away in order to get rid of that fee. The one that we're talking about the most is full-day kindergarten. We charge $3,000 for tuition for full-day kindergarten. We would like to, preferably, offer full-day kindergarten as a Scituate program for no cost, because we believe that every child should have access to full-day kindergarten.
John,
And-
Rich just had his hand up, and
Yeah.
just sorry.
Well, it's just, you know, we were talking about special needs, and as John will confirm, it's the most volatile part of the budget. There is no
Yeah.
way that you can actually get it pinned down at any point in time, because one or two people moving into town changes everything.
Right.
So it is a very hard.
It is. It's a difficult one to pinpoint. And even in this budget development, that number has moved back and forth a couple of times. You know, so, you know, right now, we think it's a little on the high side, but I'm very cautious.
Someone moves in town, or?
Well, that's, yeah, and so, or
Circuit
someone
breaker
goes out,
changes.
something happens. I mean, it's amazing how situations can come up that are unanticipated. Hospitalizations that come up, and, you know, the student can't return to our schools, and they have to go to a placement in between returning to our schools. That's unanticipated, and things like that happen. So, yes, it's a volatile line in our budget. We do the best we can with projecting it. We think this is a fairly accurate number. Again, like I said, it might be a little on the high side, but I'd rather have it on the high side than under budgeted. So, you know, in terms of other additions, we're looking at adding 1.2 teachers to the high school. The high school is the only population we have right now that's increasing. Gates is relatively flat. They're going to go up a little bit in the next couple of years, but they won't need additional staffing per se for teachers in the classroom. The elementary schools are losing students, and will continue to lose over the next 5 years. Our elementary population is going down. I anticipate we're losing net 1 teacher this year in the elementary schools. We're losing 1 at Jenkins. We're losing 1 at Wampatuck, and we're going to put 1 at Hatherley to lower class sizes there. But it's a net loss of 1 elementary teacher. I project over the next 3 to 5 years, probably going to lose 7 elementary teachers with the loss of students, and we're just down. I mean, you know, right now, I mean, we have 157 kindergarten students registered for next year, and that'll go up a little bit compared to a few years ago. We were 225. It's going down.
And that's variable also. You put a new development in here or there, and.
And that can
100
change.
kids come in the
Right.
system, and it's.
Right, so all I can say is within the next, you know, in the next 3 to 5 years, we're pretty certain this is gonna happen, but, you know, a development goes in, you know, with, you know, 3 or 4 bedroom homes, children move into those developments, you know, school population will go up. I mean, our population will go up again. We just happen to be, and we're not unlike many communities across Massachusetts where the population is decreasing right now. The economy has something to do with that, and, you know, that obviously, people delayed having children, there were smaller families, there's a lot of reasons for that. Demographically, people weren't selling their homes, they weren't moving out of towns, those homes weren't turning over. That will free up again, that will change, but for right now, when you start looking at the future, you know, is our school staffing right now about right-sized, you know, with what we're looking to add? The answer is yes. You know, we're about where we should be, and we'll actually start to come down a little bit over the next few years. So anyways, the high school is still growing, and will continue to grow for the next few years. There'll be over 900 next year. They haven't been over 900 in several years, so they'll be back up over 900 and continue to grow a little bit. And then finally, we're looking to put the library and media specialist back into Gates. That was something that was lost back in the budget cuts. And so the only place where we have a library media specialist right now is at the high school. And so we're looking to put one back at Gates. You know, obviously the job of library media specialist has changed significantly in the last several years.
What is it, John? Would you
Yeah,
mention
the
it?
job right now is all about research, about how to get kids to be able to learn how to research using primarily electronic means, to do research, to be able to analyze the research. I mean, the kids now, you know, and they'll Google something, and they'll think whatever they Googled, whatever comes up first is the truth. Right. When in fact it may or may not be. And so you have to teach kids really how to begin to do real research at middle school, and that will help obviously as they get on to high school. It will be a special at Gates where all students will go through that class, so it'll not be a librarian sitting in a library checking out books. It'll be somebody who's teaching students really about how to use technology in a way to be able to access information. So, you know, between the new request that we're making and, you know, the $1.1 million in contractual increases, that accounts for most of what we've got in this budget for staffing. You know, we obviously have included the rationale behind everything and the narrative. We showed you the student-teacher ratio, which we're getting right back to where we were before the budget cuts, which is great. I mean, 2 good years of, you know, budget in Scituate has helped us get back what we had lost. I mean, we're not going to have as many staff, but we don't have as many kids either. So, so that's a real positive in there. Class size, I mean, class sizes, we have reduced those dramatically in the elementary schools where you get the biggest bang for your buck when you invest in that. And we have a class size now, average elementary, at 19.7, and next year we're projecting 19.2 for grades K to 6. So I can tell you, you know, firsthand, talking to parents, they're thrilled. Teachers are thrilled with that. That'll make a huge difference for years to come, keeping those low class sizes. We also put in there, you know, just for your own, you can see the other revenues that we're looking at, from the revolving accounts where we collect dollars to the grants that we continue to get. We're projecting next year pretty much level funding in grants from the state. But even the grants, if you look at the total amount of money we used to get from grants and what we're getting now, it's less. We used to get more. So that means when grants go down, the local responsibility goes up. You know, so that's been part of the challenge that we've had. State and federal grants have been going down. And we showed you the capital, and we'll be here talking with the capital planning committee tomorrow night, I think. And so talking about, you know, some of our requests in capital, continuing with our technology integration plan. We really are making a huge investment in Scituate and technology. We've got the infrastructure built. Now we're looking to put technology in the hands of students and teachers. So continuing along that line. The other big one is moving the Early Childhood Center to an elementary school. The goal is to move that to Wampatuck next year. And, you know, it really belongs in an elementary school. It's in the high school right now. The high school could be a potential construction site next year, that site, or in the future, and if that becomes, you know, the long-range plan for Gates. And so, you know, getting those students off that site is probably a good thing. So we're looking at doing that. And finally, you know, I just want to point out comparable districts overview. And this is very interesting. The first chart, it's on your last page of the budget. The first chart shows you the comparison of like districts. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education put you together with a group of districts that are like you. In other words, relatively the same size, but generally have the same low-income population, the same students with disabilities, ELL population. And then what they do is they take the MCAS scores, and they look to see how you do against like districts. Well, in looking at this group of, there's 10 districts that they compare us to, Situate's in orange, the top score is Hopkinton, which is in blue. I actually worked in Hopkinton back in a principal job at one time. But the reality of this is, we're actually very close. We're actually second in this group, if you actually did the numbers of the 10. Scituate is performing number 2. And the only reason why we're below Hopkinton is they're outscoring us in science. But you also notice that we have the number 1, in this group, number 1 math performance of these 10 districts. So when compared to like districts, Scituate is doing very, very well. I think that's something to be celebrated and say, look, you know, that our teachers are performing, they're doing a great job, and our kids are performing. So, so that's a good thing. And then we also showed you some.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
And that means we even beat Duxbury.
We beat Duxbury. Say it.
No, I'm saying that only because, you know, Duxbury gets all the accolades for
Right.
being great, and yet on the South Shore. But I just want to make sure that the press understands that, you know, Duxbury is below Scituate. Oh, she just left? No, she's not. We got the ledger over here. The ledger can print it. There you go. Sorry, I just wanted to.
And I also worked in that community too.
I was just going to ask, John, do you, you know, you were in Hopkinton, now could we expect to see Scituate beat Hopkinton next year? I mean.
That's my goal.
Thank you.
That's my goal.
It's a great goal.
Great answer.
Always looking for number 1, right? And then per pupil expenditures, which is another nice barometer, we took the neighboring districts, which aren't necessarily all like districts. We took neighboring districts, and then we picked some others that are relatively, again, similar to us, same size. And we sort of compared ourselves against these districts, kind of benchmarking ourselves. And we're sort of right in the middle of per pupil spending. You know, we're right there. I'll mention, just because we mentioned Duxbury and Hopkinton, they are both outspending us per pupil. And so that's another thing you might want to take note of. So, you know, but we're doing very well comparatively, you know, and I think that's the message that we take away from this, that, you know, we're spending, I mean, we're spending mid-range. You know, we're not spending high, we're not spending low, we're spending mid-range, and we're getting good results. I think that's the message. So anyways, open up to questions that you might have. Any other questions?
First, a comment, John. This is great, easy to follow. Thank you very much for the very in-depth, you know, backup material. Brought up to the board for any questions.
I mean, that's what I was gonna start with. I read it, it was comprehensive, it gives you all the data, and every question I had, it seemed like it was answered on the next page. So, and it gave us the details where we wanted it, and the big picture stuff too. So, thank you to your team that put this together. It's the best one we've had in years, is my opinion. Just a few notes that as I was going through it, it looks like there's about 10 new FTEs in the whole program this year, 16 new ones last year.
Right.
So as you mentioned, when we had the cuts
We're building back.
4 years ago, we're back up to that number again, which is good. You know, a couple things that struck me, and these may be kind of smaller, but natural gas, like, it was going up, doubling.
Because we switched all the last 3 schools. Cushing, Hadley, and Gates are now gonna be all natural gas.
Yeah, oil has gone way down.
So where's the?
The oil, you should see, I have a $10,000 budget.
Right.
The only place we have it is, I have a depot to fix some of the buses down in the Driftway.
So it's just conversion?
Yeah, just for that. And I can do either or.
Right.
I can do, all 6 schools now are either or convert to natural gas, or I could put oil in.
And obviously,
Oil.
natural gas is less expensive, so we've moved in that
Not
direction.
these last 2 months it hasn't been.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, but
Not our
on
last
the-
2 bills.
Not if you flow.
On that note, did you have to switch fuels at all? Was supplies running to the point, you know?
I should have. At the
Large,
high school there, I
large
should have.
municipalities
Yeah,
and things
yeah,
that were
yeah,
dual
yeah.
fuels, they're asking to switch.
Yeah,
Sometimes, again, we're not as big of a user, you know. I mean, I've been in that situation before where I've been in other districts where we've had to switch. We're not necessarily that big of a user, so we didn't have to switch. But again, the price was up. We're getting, you know, the last couple of months. I mean, it's been a tough winter too, so. So we've seen that. You know, one thing that we're not reflecting yet, I think we got to be aware of, you know, the ESCO
Right.
project.
And that,
you know,
that was part of that.
we're investing a lot in things that should reduce our energy costs overall. But we don't have solid numbers yet. We have some preliminary numbers that we looked at. We don't have solid numbers yet to say what the savings are gonna be. We do anticipate savings. We did not reflect those in this budget. We expect that some of these costs will be lower on energy. You know, we hope. That was the
And if I
purpose.
lock in, Sean, which what I'm gonna do, because I'm up in November of 14 for all 6 schools for natural gas. So if I lock in sometime, and I belong to South Shore Collaborative, which I think the town also was part of that too, because they lock in too.
Right.
We had a heck of a price last year at .0673, you know, per decatherm, and it was just phenomenal, you know, because now it's like 48 cents.
Yeah.
So you did take advantage,
We took advantage of all that. But it's still, you know, 1,800.
The usage.
The usage is huge in a 209, I got 510,000 square feet for all 6 buildings.
Right.
No
But also you
natural gas.
see that the curriculum, improvements to the curriculum are still high.
Yeah.
You know, there's no real cut in any of the
Right.
core things, which is
Right.
good to see. The new positions, you mentioned all those. One question I did have on the METCO program.
Yes.
Is that being phased out? I thought that was going away.
No, hopefully not. I mean, one of the things with Metco, the grants have been relatively flat for the last few years. And, you know, and the cost of education goes up. I mean, Metco is still a plus to us in, you know, in terms of revenue. It offsets teacher salaries. It offsets, obviously, the Metco director, but teacher salaries as well, we put towards that. We have approximately 60 students, give or take. Sometimes we have a little less than that. Sometimes we have a little more. Obviously, you know, it's a very positive program for what it does for the Scituate Public Schools, as well as what it does for the students coming to us from Boston. So it has been relatively flat, though, in terms of the actual money, and we've been lobbying for trying to get an increase in the grant for the state.
So the program is still in place. I thought I read
Yeah.
somewhere that it wasn't.
No,
Well, that's
it's
great.
still going very strong.
Every year for it.
Yeah, very strong. But, you know, again, on the legislative level, I think Jim has left, but we've had to really push to keep funding in for Metco as the state looks at their budget and has made cuts over the years. You know, they've looked at Metco.
Right.
And the problem is, I mean, you got those students here, it's not like you can just say, sorry, we're not getting the funding anymore, you gotta go back. There are students, I mean, I look at a Metco student as if they live in Situate, that's how I look at it.
Many do, don't
Yeah, they
they?
And some, many stay here,
Right,
you know,
right,
during the
yeah,
week. And
right.
so, you know, that's how I look at a Metco student. So once you take them in, you own them until they leave.
That's great.
You know, so, but if the funding ever gets cut, you know, we're still gonna own them. So, you know, that money helps to fund some of our teachers, for example, in our system, so.
Yeah, every year they have a Metco Day where they, you know, they go lobby the State House to try to make sure that funding stays put, and they just keep getting money.
Yeah, and the hope is that, again, for next year, it'll be at least level funded. You know, we're asking for a little bit more, but whether that happens or not, I don't know.
Okay.
And then beneath that one's a circuit breaker. I know there's a 1-year delay
Right.
in the receipts for that. Is that why it's so much lower than?
Yes, there's 2 reasons. One is, what happens is, circuit breaker is 2 things. One is how many students qualify. So that's the first piece of it, because you qualify for expenses above a certain amount.
33%.
And so that's number one. So what's happened to us in Scituate is we've had some students who have aged out, meaning they've gotten to 22, which means they're no longer our responsibility, our fiscal responsibility. So they are no longer eligible, we're no longer eligible to get circuit breaker reimbursement for those students. So that's number one. The second one is percentage, how much the state is going to give you then on those eligible students. That number has gone down during the economic recession, is starting to come back.
So what is it now?
It's around 70-ish.
70,
Yeah.
What we used in the budget this year was 70. Typically, there's 72 to 75. You may get a bump at the end of the year for the difference. But we use 70% in this year's budget.
Yeah, and again, you keep in mind, it's 70, and it's based on, you're right, it lags a year, so it's based off the students of last year.
Right.
That's how they factor it. And we had some students age out of our special education program last year.
Right. And then the expenditures, you know, it was good to see the security program's gone through already. The technology is the big
Yeah.
piece of it. One that was close to my heart was replacing the stairs at Jenkins.
Yeah.
Which I built 10 years ago.
Yeah.
The Jenkins dad.
Yeah.
The Dad's Club.
Dad's Club.
Yeah.
yeah.
That was a-
They're being replaced. They're a little
Surprising
compromised
lasted-
right now. We talk about your seawalls being
You
compromised.
got 10 years
yeah.
out of them, so you're doing pretty good.
So we don't want you building our
No, no,
seawalls.
you don't want it. Pizza box, I'm like, Pythagorean theorem, yeah. And I think, you know, the comparisons, that was the other thing, that the
Yeah.
comparisons are really great. And then your whole big picture plan
Yeah.
here, although there was a lot to chew on.
Yeah.
You know, it's great to see that there's a plan behind
Yeah.
the madness.
And we're
so.
sticking to the plan, so.
Very good job, I was impressed.
Any other questions,
No, I
comments?
was going to just concur with Tony. John, Paul, and certainly school committee. This is a great presentation, and it answers a lot of questions, so I want to thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is the zoning articles. I thought I saw Ms. Laura outside at the door.
Hallway.
First, water resource protection, village overlay, medical marijuana. I don't know if Bill will, Laura, you're up. And Bill? Find it.
Absolutely. I wasn't sure.
Exactly. We treat everyone equally.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Laura, if you just wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, and then we'll probably, I'm sure we're gonna start with the water, overlay district. So,
John Clarkson, I'm chairman of the Scituate Water Resources Committee.
Richard Taylor, I'm one of the Scituate Planning Board members.
Bill Lindbacher, Chair Planning Board.
Thank you. I heard this once before already, but if you wouldn't mind, Laura?
Do you want to start with the water resource?
I guess so, and then maybe John, you know, whatever,
Just
yeah.
kind of let John.
All right.
Take that one away.
So, Scituate operates under a Department of Environmental Protection Water Management Act permit, and the permit is reissued essentially every 20 years. And currently, the schedule of our permit renewal is this year to occur in actually August of 2014. And over time, the Department of Environmental Protection has been taking steps to see to it that the communities best protect their drinking water resources for the public that they serve. And the Department of Environmental Protection has provided guidance to us as to what our water protection district bylaw should look like, according to them. So this article, pretty much, the real intent of it is to bring our water resource protection district in line with the Department of Environmental Protection regulations as to what protection should be offered. The map is on display here in Town Hall for everyone to see. Essentially, the old district was just one blue color. Now the map will identify not only the watershed breadth of the Water Resources Protection District, but there are particular protections as you live closer to the source of the drinking water supply. There are additional protections put in place that are so designated as to whether you're a Zone A, which is for surface water, or Zone 2 for groundwater. And I probably have those reversed, but anyway. Oh, I got it right this time. Anyway, so those maps are on display, but, you know, the cross the T dot of I of it is that this is a regulation that we will need to have in place for our Water Management Act permit to get renewed.
We have no choice. at this time, or is this something that could be put off? This was on at the last ATM, wasn't it? That
Yes.
was withdrawn, okay.
Yeah, and I was not able to make the town meeting, so I'm not sure exactly what the issues are. I mean, so far, we have good, what I feel is good momentum. First of all, let me state that as chairman of the Water Resources Committee, I chair an advisory board for you, the Board of Selectmen, who are water commissioners. And the zoning bylaw article that's being presented here is really an article of the planning board. So let me first underscore the good collaboration that the Water Resources Committee and the planning board has engaged in to get this through. I'm not sure what the issues were last time. I wasn't around for town meeting. I was away. We've had a number of, we had an initial presentation before the planning board about 5-6 weeks ago. There were some comments made, some concerns about some areas designated. We're actually having one area of concern will be reviewed by a hydrologist with the Department of Environmental Protection later this week, just to make sure the map we present is as accurate as possible. We've had some comments from questions raised by some of the members of the development community, and I think we've answered those fairly clearly. I would also point out that, and then we met before the advisory committee, and so far we have not heard what the results of that vote was, but I felt no one came to oppose it at the
That's what
advisory committee meeting.
I'm looking out in the audience, and I don't know if there's anybody here to oppose it
I'm
now,
sure,
and I don't.
I'm sure we'll find out soon enough.
Right.
But for the most part, we've tried as much as possible to educate the public as to the real need for this, and at least the feedback I've had has been fairly positive. I will also point out that we are not alone in having to have this happen. The communities of the South Coastal Watershed are all on the same general schedule about their Water Management Act permit renewal. So it's not like Scituate is going to have a set of rules that Norwell doesn't have. Norwell's in the same, will need to adopt very similar bylaws. Hanover, Duxbury, Weymouth, Cohasset has already done it. It's not that Scituate is all of a sudden going to be a very unique place to try to build a home. This is going to be the standard throughout the South Coastal Water District once this is done, and in fact, the entire state is going through its Water Permit Act renewals over the next 3 to 4 years anyway. So I did want to make that point as well.
I'm glad you did. I heard you say that before, so
Yeah.
we're all on the same playing field. Not
Yeah,
that it matters, but-
it's not that if you're, gee, I wish I could do something here, oh, let me step 3 feet over here to the neighboring town and I can do it.
Right.
It's really, they're going to have to adopt very similar bylaws.
All right, okay. Open it up to the board, questions, comments?
Just, John, I mean, essentially, it's the five changes to our current regulations that are footnoted here is what we're actually voting, right? And the change to the map?
Well, you're voting a change to the map, and you're voting the entire article, not just the individual changes. The article is different in a number of ways, but primarily I do want to point to last year, Laura did a great job pulling together the article for what is in the district, what has to happen in a Zone A, what has to happen in a Zone 2, what has to happen in an overlapping. But the article went on forever and ever. And what we tried to do this time was to simplify it by putting the protective measures into a grid format. So the format, what you will be voting on an entire water resource protection article. And
So
really
this will replace-
taking the old one off and putting the new one in. Because we also feel that this format is much easier for someone to come and read and understand what's expected of them.
That's what's out in the hallway, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken, right? Okay, so people are gonna.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the problem last time, we say we're amending, I think last time, we're amending 520, but we didn't know what it was before and what it's going to. So this is what it's going to. This is the
I think,
actual.
I think the other, and that's what I was gonna ask Bill, the other issue that I remember last year was if some of the neighbors or some of the streets, or there was a potential for anybody who wanted to do any work on their property, they could be severely restricted, and didn't see that in this version. Last year, that was one of the issues that we
That
had.
was an issue that came up, was they were concerned as to whether they'd be allowed to or not be allowed.
Right.
And it was some nebulous areas, so rather than go forth with it and then come back and have to change it, right, we opted not to make that.
And that's gone, I couldn't find it, so that was one of the major issues I had with it, which is good. I mean, it's a good
I think
thing.
that the matrix makes
It's much more helpful.
Great. Anyone else? That it?
No, John answered my other one, which is Norwell, considering we're doing this, and our watershed can kind of go through there, back into Scituate, but they have to do it too, so we're benefiting Cohasset and Hingham, but obviously Norwell's gonna be doing it, so.
Cohasset has already done it, Norwell is in the watershed, Hanover's in the watershed. I used to know all the towns by heart, but I've since forgotten it.
That's all right. That was my second question. Well done.
John, are you done, or anyone from the planning board like to add anything? And I'll open it up if there's anyone in the audience that has a comment on this. Not seeing any. All right. Next.
We'll vote on this next week, by the way,
Yes.
just to let you know.
Thank you,
Next
John.
Tuesday.
Thank you for your time.
Our hearing is actually still open.
It is, okay.
And now,
Because of the map.
and now for
Once
the,
we get the answer back from DEP, then we know whether we have to make a modification.
Gotcha.
now the village overlay. Laura.
Okay, the village overlay follows on an article that was petitioned last fall, where some property owners south of the Driftway wanted to get their property into the village business overlay district. It was kind of remanded to the planning board for further study. The Economic Development Commission was doing a market study and economic development report. The planning board wanted to see what those recommendations were. Those recommendations came out in favor of extending this zoning. Another thing that's happened in the meantime is that the MBTA is looking at auctioning the property that's on the east side of the Driftway, the parking lot that's the further away from the station. So if they do that and the town is interested in doing something with that property that would be in character with Greenbush, but would also contribute, something to the tax base, getting this type of zoning would probably be helpful in doing that. So, that's basically the zoning in a nutshell.
Now, I think I know the answer to this question, but just in like one sentence or less, by doing this, could you tell the audience and everyone watching, how could that change? What could we expect? What businesses there or vacant land, what could they expect to see if this passes? Just in very, very
There'd
quick.
be mixed-use development, which isn't allowed now, and a higher density of residential. So you'd have apartments and condominiums in that area, not, unrestricted, but more dense than like in a residential zone.
Okay. Tony?
I mean, the other thing that I think the area that's in this map is more inclusive than the one that we saw at the last one. At the
Special.
Right, because we were concerned about it being maybe, I don't know, what was the word you used, John?
Spot zoning is what it really was, yeah.
A couple questions I had one was, there's this building in the front of this, what's this development called?
James, no, Riverway.
Riverway. This property in the front was supposed to be a mixed-use building when they developed it, and I was just wondering why that's not included in the,
Is it already, Laura? Bill?
Well,
Is
that
it
one's
part of that?
already in a mixed-use.
Oh, it is?
In a mixed-use zoning district. It's a slightly different one than this is, but, that one, it's gonna have a separate building. This would have a building that's, got retail or offices on the first floor and apartments like right up above.
To Tony's point, I thought the developers came in and they were gonna have some type of retail component out front. That's what I thought.
Yeah, they are
The
supposed
answer
to
is
do
yes,
that.
like a lot of the other developers, they got caught up in what the economy.
Sure,
No, but
right.
I guess, so.
It's not,
It looks by this map that area is not zoned for mixed use.
Well, that's in a different zone. It's in something called the Planned Development District, and it's another type of mixed-use district. But the land that's gray here was not in that district.
Okay. And the area to the left of, over here, where that retail stuff is, where the new fish market went over there, that's another, is that similar to the other zoning on the other side?
That's actually in residential, where the fish,
Somebody missed you.
no, you're talking about up on Stockbridge.
Yeah.
That's in residential.
You circled the pipe.
Yeah, and then underneath, below that
Yes,
is,
right.
below that is concrete pipe, Scituate concrete, which is industrial, I guess that's the way I'd like to put it, so you can understand, not you, but I'm saying people in general can understand, there's no residential component. Well, and
So it'd be good maybe to see this area with all the, you kind of, in this map, it shows you a little bit, you think the white areas are just plain residential areas as opposed to that this actually abuts an industrial area. So it is the right area to do this type of development in, because it is in a commercially and industrial
We
area.
could put some more detail
Yeah.
on the map.
I think the map out in the hall, believe it or not, there's a
Shows
better
it.
map.
It has-
shows
it has better
much more
colors.
detail.
Yeah.
On it. Yeah, I'm glad you guys took it back, because I knew when they first came, it was really kind of a spot zoning issue that they were addressing. Kind of makes sense, the way the Greenbush has changed, and with the overlay district for more density, kind of, what was it called, what was it, the term, the buzzword back in the early 2000s?
Transit-oriented development?
Transit-oriented, yeah. So the only thing I was looking at was, how did you guys decide on the parking lot, MBTA? How did that come into play? I'm just curious, only because it didn't go further into the concrete pipe. Why stop there? Why not go further? And was there a reason for specifically identifying that? That's all.
The upper parking lot?
Yeah, the upper
I think
parking
it was
lot.
because, again, what Laura had mentioned is that the MBTA is looking to potentially, auction on that site, or maybe potentially have some type of development there, and so we thought that that would work well with this Village Business Overlay District. The other thing we had discussions about Scituate concrete pipe. As you know, there's very little that's really an industrial commercial zone in Scituate, and so we didn't really want to eat into that because there's so little of that space that's there. And we were trying to keep it compact. One of the things that came up with the potential of the study that Laura talked about from the Economic Development Commission is that keeping it sort of concentrated maybe around the Driftway and New Driftway as being a potential gateway to Greenbush and then a gateway to the harbor. So we were trying to keep it relatively compact in that area, which is, if you see, that's kind of like the newer gray area, sort of is centered around that intersection.
Right.
With the south side being the South Shore Auto Parts, the Herringbrook Plaza, the Dunkin' Donuts, which is already obviously there, and really then adding the parking lot for the train. That's really the addition, or those additions.
It allows for continuity in that area.
Okay.
And again, again, you're looking at the development study or the market conditions. They were talking about Country Way being more of a, what was the term? It was like not residential, but more of a village, sort of retail, more of a, I don't know if to say relaxed type of situation where it would be less dense, where maybe this, around this particular intersection, like I said, could be a gateway, potentially having more retail. So.
Makes sense, makes sense.
There's your pathway.
And is it 40,000 or 44,000 square feet? Is it 10? Is that the bonus or the benefit for,
It's 16 per 40,000 square feet,
Okay.
and then it can go up to 20.
oh, okay, so it's 16 for 40,000 square feet, a little less than an acre, to be able to have that benefit of density.
Yeah.
So is that a guarantee, or is it just is that just the
It's
base?
a special permit.
It's a special permit, and any bonus would be based on public good, or demonstrated public benefit.
And I know, the reason why I'm asking is because obviously there was a project either before you or you've dealt with it on Country Way, and I presume that's what they came in with a bonus of 16, or were they looking for more? And the reason why I'm asking, I'm not asking your opinion on it, but I'm saying this is the first time you've seen it in this, whether it's North Scituate or Greenbush, and I was curious what your feelings are about that, given the number and the scope.
Yeah, we haven't finished our review, we still
All
going
right, so
through
it's,
hearings on it.
all right. And you can't give an opinion on it then, okay. I don't want you to, because you can't, that's the reason why.
But I will
Just
say
saying.
that I believe the town meeting voted, I think it was 2006.
It
For the
was.
Village Business Overlay District.
Yep.
And so since 2006, as Bill had mentioned, there hasn't been any development that falls into that, primarily because of the economic conditions. So the one application that is before us, the planning board right now, I believe is the first one going through this process. Am I?
No, you're right, it is. In this district, or as opposed to the Front Street, because it did
Correct.
fall into that
In the-
category.
I'm
But
sorry,
that's a
in the Greenbush
different
Village
number,
Business Overlay
bonus,
District.
yeah.
Agreed.
No, I have no other
All right,
questions.
okay, all right. Moving on, I think to the last one, which is medical marijuana, right?
Kevin, can you open that door?
Okay, so the registered marijuana dispensaries also comes as kind of a follow-up to the zoning that was passed a year ago, which set up the moratorium on those dispensaries. And that moratorium ends in May, so when that's gone, there would be no zoning to control those.
Which
So-
means what? So what if we don't do
Well,
anything?
You could have a dispensary on Front Street, say, or Greenbush. What
So it'd be
people are,
harder to control if we did nothing.
be a little hard to control. People are describing these as mostly like steel buildings, where they've got, lots of lights and plants and paraphernalia inside to, to grow them, to
Right.
grow the plants. So they're not really charming, however you feel about the medical marijuana issue. The buildings aren't something that people necessarily would want to have in a business district. They're a little more kind of industrial looking. So what the planning board decided to do was to zone them for the commercial district, the kind of semi-industrial district where you've got the concrete pipe, some of the area that's, gonna be in that village business, but the Herringbrook Mall, the Harbor Medical Building, and over to, I believe the Driftway Park is the end of it, the windmill is in it, and then the golf course and the
So if
transfer
we-
station, which would never be developed, for private.
So if by doing this, and then someone wanted to have an operation in North Situate, the answer would be no. They couldn't.
Correct.
Right, okay, so.
So what's the area, the zone that you're looking to place it?
Commercial zoning district.
Okay, so that's,
Basically along Driftway.
it's the pink zone, right?
Correct.
Right. So that doesn't impact the medical building. Is there an overlay?
The square medical building, the Harbor Medical Building.
Across from the animal shelter, not the animal shelter, what was the doggy pound,
Celtic
whatever,
Paws.
Celtic
Yeah.
Paws. That area, and then going back, okay.
Down,
It's across the
Dunkin'
street,
Donuts.
and the transfer station, heading down towards, okay.
We did a little map of it. I don't know if you guys got it.
We didn't get it, that's why I was curious.
no, we didn't get it.
I can, send you one by email.
And you couldn't locate it, or there are parameters where it could not be located. And I remember at the advisory committee, you spoke about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
what about,
Dedicated an area, and then we further defined it by conventional requirements within that area. Does that make sense? So we said,
It's
here's a
got-
footprint.
right,
Then we said this, that wherever you put it can't be more than 500 feet from this and from that. So it tells you within that district where it could actually be located.
okay.
I mean, the reality is, there are only so many permits to be able to do this, and frankly, nobody's gonna be looking to put it in Scituate because they wanna be in a location that's gonna be able to go both north, south, east, and west, and primarily on, Route 3 or, an interstate. Hanover would be a prime example, or Plymouth, so people coming off the Cape. So, I mean, I think your question is, do we need it? I think the answer is yes, so that we can at least restrict it in the event in the future somebody
Give
wanted
them
to.
licenses, yeah.
But on the other hand, for a practical purpose, I don't think you'll ever see one in this town, but not in our lifetime at least.
Yeah, we were trying to be
Our
proactive
Our
about it.
concern was, that a lot of people said that in Colorado too, and
I'm giving an opinion, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just saying, from a practical business standard perspective,
Until
I
they
wouldn't see
legalize
that. Well, I'm saying it's legal, but I'm saying the issue would be, then it comes into, are they gonna limit the number of dispensaries? That's all.
I agree with you.
Yeah, Dan, to answer Sean's question, I mean, if we did nothing, basically, they would still have to go through all the state statutes. They'd have to adhere to all the state regulations, which then puts them, within distance of schools and all this kind of stuff. But conceivably, they could locate in the harbor or North Scituate or, some other business or zone, if we did nothing. So this does restrict it or constrain it to the commercial district.
Well done.
Okay. Great. All right. Any other, oh, that's it? Okay. Thank
Well,
you very
Rich Laura,
much.
thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, where is it? All right, okay. If it's all right with the board,
1 second.
this is gonna be, Lisa, this will be like 30 seconds, I think.
This
I'm
poor
sorry,
man
I got
came last time
That's right.
for our
If we
meeting, and
Oh, yeah, where is he?
If we can
Oh, here
just
it is.
jump to the new business, discussion and a vote to release the Walnut Tree Hill bond. We
he
had
came
some
to the last
discussion-
meeting.
Yes, thanks,
Ended up
Tony.
getting hung out for a while, and
Okay. Is there any more discussion needed from us?
No.
Or anyone have any questions, Marty, or anybody? Jump
No.
in. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I just think it's important
Oh,
to say that
I'm
we did,
sorry. Okay.
that we did look into it. The planning board released the bond. It takes the selectmen to release it. We talked to town council. It was the opinion of everyone that we've really taken the extent of the bond to the requirements of the bond. This is for Walnut Tree Hill. There was a whole set of requirements that were put out there. They fulfilled it. It's been signed off on, and there was some question as to whether we could go back and get more stuff added on to the bond, and the opinion of everybody is that no, that they held up their responsibilities, and it's pretty much a done deal. Is that?
On the advice of town council, that's exactly it.
So-
Thank you for explaining that so well. All right, I'll accept the motion. I was just trying to move things along here, all right?
Move the Board of Selectmen to approve the release of the Walnut Tree Hill bond in accordance with the tripartite agreement.
I have a motion and a
Second.
second. All those in, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay.
So we'll sign it after the meeting, and then it'll go
Yes.
wherever
Yeah,
it has
some
to
of
go.
us may have signed it. I think it's here.
Yeah, we've already
So
signed
we
it.
can,
Okay.
do you need to leave it?
Well, in terms of the signature, I can pick it up. I don't have to take it with me tonight, but I can pick it up, or it can be sent, directly to the surety if that's, it's up to
We
you.
could probably do that by Thursday, I think, if that's okay. Just give us a couple days. There are so many people out.
I
So
understand,
if
I
that's all
understand.
right, get it to you
And
electronically.
okay, if you want to send it to me electronically, I'll pick up an original here, though.
Okay,
Yes.
Do
Yes,
that?
yes.
Okay.
Probably Sheila across the hall.
Okay,
I think she'll be back on Thursday.
Okay.
So anytime after that.
good enough.
Okay,
I agree.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your patience,
Yes,
appreciate it.
thanks. Now moving on, back to final budgets for tonight, Community Preservation Committee.
If I bring Kevin up, will it go that fast?
You want, what order would you like to discuss them in, Lisa?
We are going to begin with David Ball, if you all don't mind. He's gonna be
doesn't matter to
really
me.
quick. Come on
Okay.
up, we're going to start with the Mossing Shed transfer, and
That's
then we'll
right.
go back into order at Damon Farm. Do you all have the funding sheets in front of
I don't think I have this one.
you? Yeah.
All right, I guess
It's the last one.
All right.
There are full application packages in the Dropbox. I've got a couple hard copies with me if you need any.
You have your write-up. Is there more than that?
Well, each application.
Oh, right, yeah, I don't
You don't need the decks.
Thank you, sir.
think so.
Tilden.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
So before David gets started, community preservation had a very positive year this past year. With the legislation last year that passed with the additional $25 million from the surplus budget. That meant for Scituate, almost a double in state match for this past year, which brought us up to about $680,000 in addition to our surcharge. And they hope to continue with that legislation each year. It's got to be voted each year. and they're working on that
Lisa,
lobbying right now.
What percentage is that? You know, if we throw in a dollar, they've just, did you just say they doubled their contribution?
Well, as you know,
Was
the
it used to-
calculation's a little complex, so we start with, because we're a 3% town, we start with a certain percentage, then it goes for 3 rounds, and we ended up last year with about 28%. In addition to that, 25 million came down. That's distributed to all of the participating communities at different percentages, again, based
ones
on
with the
our.
highest,
Yeah,
right.
percentage. So we ended up with about, well, with the 680,000, you know, between 50 and 75%.
Between 50 and 75?
Yeah. Well, the 28% plus the $25 million surplus, which we didn't add into the percentage.
So what was the initial percent that we got last year, 28?
Yeah.
And then we got another 28 on, or 680, you just don't know what the percent of 680 is.
Right.
Yeah. That's great.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, not at all. Very good. So this year, we went ahead with 5 of our applications, and we'll go through them one at a time, and we'll start with Mossing Shed transfer from the Historical Society.
All right, I was in here maybe 2 months ago. We talked about this to give you guys a heads up as to what we were thinking. We wanted to talk to the selectmen before we formally applied to the CPC, because we didn't want to proceed unless we got a sense that the selectmen would agree to this. It's a fairly simple project, and yet it's a little bit complex. The idea would be to move the moss shed that is down at Scituate Marine Park over to the Maritime and Irish Mossing Museum on Driftway, attach it to the main museum. That would give us an expansion of exhibit space, in particular for the mossing aspect of the museum. So the shed would be lifted. Our idea would be to have it lifted in early July. We'll be working with the harbor master when there's the least amount of boats around. Put it on a flatbed, take it over to the museum, lift it over the roof of the Maritime Museum, and put it in place when the foundations are ready. This would entail, and I guess, the necessity for the selectmen to vote to give us the building. It's a pretty straightforward project. This is the oldest, and, well, it's not only the oldest, it's the only moss shed probably in the country, certainly in Scituate. It was built maybe around 1899 or so. It was used to store Irish moss. It's not getting much use now. The other building that we have interest in down there is the Mass Humane Boathouse. That's being heavily used by the Recreation Commission for classroom space in the summertime, for the sailing program. This building isn't getting any public exposure.
And if I could pipe in from the community preservation standpoint, we felt it was a really positive move. It's been sitting down there on First Cliff now for a few years, and people walk past it but don't really know what it is, and it's not really getting any of that type of attention. Of course, the optimal place for it is to be attached to the Mossing Museum. Now it will get its due attention with regard to folks who are visiting the museum for cultural and historic reasons. So we thought that was a perfect spot for it, and we're happy to fund that transfer.
You'll survive the trip. Solid. You have put money into restoring, fixing it, maintaining
Yeah,
it, right?
CPC money was used to do a total restoration of the building, so it's actually right now in very good condition.
Excellent.
Dave, when you say us, you mean Historical Society?
Yeah.
So that'll just be a 6, you have 5 now, right? So it'll just be another building under the care of the Historical Society, like Cudworth, Lighthouse?
No,
Manhound?
the way we envision it working, you would donate the building to the Historical Society, or give it to us, and we would then take ownership of it and attach it to the Maritime Museum.
Okay, but we don't, the Historical Society doesn't own the Maritime Museum.
Yes, we do.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's one of the 6 buildings that we own directly.
I
The
didn't
town owns the moss shed because it was bought, it was sitting on the property when the town bought the boatyard.
We probably wouldn't even know it if if it disappeared, other than the historical society. I'm serious. If it wasn't for the efforts made in the historical society, and I grew up in the town, and, what are the dimensions of it? It's not real big.
16 by 20.
Right.
I didn't know that the Historical Society owned the museum, so great.
Yep.
I mean, it's pretty cool down there. Anyone else? Comments, questions?
No, it's a great project. I mentioned that back in December. I think it's a great opportunity to preserve something. It makes sense to put it next to the Mossing Museum. People can appreciate it.
And for those of you at home, it's $18,530.
Thank you.
That may change. I was just talking to Lisa earlier about that. There's a discrepancy in the amount. The amount of the budget that we had proposed was $26,500. It's now on their budget as 18,000 something. So I'm gonna have to have another discussion with CPC
Yeah, we
on
take that. I was looking at our paperwork, we had it originally for 21 something, and you all took a certain percentage of
Right.
that. So we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it. It's not gonna be a lot of money. One other benefit for doing all this, we had put in CPC money, a request for, I think it was $50,000 to move both of the buildings that are down at the boatyard that are of historical nature, the moss shed and the boathouse. The boathouse was in fact moved and put on a new foundation. The idea originally was to move the moss shed back. That money has not been spent. So by moving this over to the Maritime Museum, it's gonna be kind of a wash, because it's about 24,000, something like that, in the CPC account to move the moss shed back. That's not gonna happen because it's gonna be moved out of there.
Great.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Damon Memorial. So our next project is our only open space acquisition for this year. It is for CPC's voted to recommend funding of $784,000 for the purchase and preservation of approximately 37.7 acres of buildable open space and construction of a small parking area and reimbursement of legal fees. I'll turn it over to Mr. Snow, who's got big pictures.
I have some map handouts. I don't know if you want additional information.
Yeah, if you hand it to us, we'll pass them out. I can't see that far. Thanks.
Thanks, Frank. Only the property, got a picture of orientated, and then a water resource map. So, the Damon Memorial Preserve property is off Clap Road. I guess I'm gonna just hold this.
You know what you might want to do, Frank, because it's the first map that we have. You might want to show to the audience if you want, because we can see it here.
It's in red, off Clap Road. It abuts the South Swamp. It's approximately 40 acres. It's really adjacent to the Crosby parcel, which has been voted to purchase and almost ready to transfer to the town. There was some land court issues with that that's tied it up for a while. But if you can see that between sort of the tan piece of property, which is the Crosby, this space all between that is all part of the South Swamp, which is essentially all open space as well. It's probably the last large parcel in the West End to be acquired. The Damon family has agreed to sell this to the town at what we feel is a really substantially reduced price from what they could sell it for on the market. And we really would hope that the town would pursue this. All the Bates Lane pieces are the ones that we've been acquiring over the past 10 years with the Maxwell Trust and CPC funds. And so this piece here is a large piece of uplands and almost no wetlands on it. It would easily be developed if it were on the open market. So we'd really like to see this be added to the pieces that we've already acquired. I can show you the parcel looks like. Again, Clap Road, it fronts on Clap Road with two pieces, but it's substantially uplands with some cart paths on it. It's an oak, pine, woodlands.
When you say uplands, Frank, exactly, I know there's no topography as far as like the varying degrees. I mean, how does it, what's it like? It's not mountainous or hilly, it's relatively flat?
Level, a little bit sloping, but uplands as opposed to there's no wetlands.
Right, that I understand, but I was just saying, so it's relatively flat?
It's very wooded, it's fairly mature now. It was in a tree farm status for a number of years. It's no longer in that tree farm status. Let's see. Water resource map show you that it touches on the water resource. It's not totally in the water resource area, but the way this property slopes, a good portion of the water that would shed from this property falls into the water resources, and then there's a tributary right to Tack Factory Pond. So it certainly works for us in terms of a water quality issue as well as open space.
That yellow piece, put your finger on it?
This is,
Yeah,
the
that's it.
yes, it's actually several pieces
Mhm.
put together, but water resource map just kind of fringes on that parcel, but an awful lot of it sheds this way as well as into the South Swamp. And so that parcel's here, and this is all watershed and a tributary to the Tack Factory Pond.
Safely to say you could build, if you were a developer, you could build how many, 1 acre zoning up there, 20 homes?
You must have X-ray vision. So, if this were developed, this is potentially what could be built on that, which I think were 26 lots. And I think given the number of other projects that are going on in Scituate, it's not that inconceivable to think that that would be a potential. So they just had this roughly done to show value.
Yep. At your last presentation, Frank, you would,
That's a lot of tax
lost
revenue.
my train of thought. I was gonna go with this, all right, keep going, I'm sorry, I'll think of it later.
No, that's, so, you know, if these were sold, if we took the value of each one of these lots at, say, $70,000 or something like that, well over $1.5 million. And so we're looking for $780,000.
Now, I remember, are there paths, that was what was discussed earlier, paths and parking, is it
So,
anything
right now,
now?
there's already some great, what we call
Trails?
cart paths
Okay.
and trails, and this doesn't show all of them, but there's pieces coming in here and here. I would think, actually, I just had conversations today with the police chief and fire chief regarding parking and trails on some of our other property. The ideal situation is that we could create the parking fairly close to the road, so it'd be easy for the police to monitor and the fire department to something happen. So more than likely, we'll be creating some sort of parking area at one of these two locations. And then probably making some other sort of connectors. Essentially, it's nice to have a loop. And a good part of that's already in place from these old woods roads. So it would be really easy to improve on that just a little bit.
The other nice piece of it is that during the winter and in dry spells as well, you can actually take some of those old cart paths from this property over to Crosby, which is kind of a neat thing, and connects it into that whole Bates Conservation Land.
Oh, by the way, with me tonight is Cindy Robbins from Maxwell, who's been working at this for a good long time, and Deb Bartlett in Gainesville.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
My question is, did you guys look at this as a possibility for recreation? We have a real need for baseball fields and lacrosse fields and soccer fields, and that's why I'm asking about the topography, and I see Greg Morris's is here. I mean, I have no issues about preserving it and doing so, but I'm like, for open space, when we take a look at the first map, and we've talked about in the past, all that's been preserved for conservation, but here's I think, a great opportunity for the town for the fields that it desperately needs. Is that something that was ever discussed
No, I
with,
think that's it.
was that ever discussed, no, what I'm saying with CPC, was that ever discussed with Recreation? To see if that was an option, to be able to see, because that's 37 acres with what looks like some wetlands off, but I mean, it would be a great opportunity for mixed use with respect to farming, you know, and also open fields, and maybe even with some conservation, that you could use the car paths to go into the Crosby, instead of just having it all into conservation.
Well, a few pieces, John, if I might. The Conservation Commission was the owner of this article. It came to us through
Maxwell Trust, right.
And,
But they're only looking for conservation, I'm talking about recreation.
but part of the other piece to this is that the Damon family has agreed to sell this at a reduced price. They've had it in a tree farm. Their dad was very passionate about that. And that's one of the reasons that they'd like to see it come to the town of Scituate as opposed to be developed, is so that it would remain with that, if I can speak to that, in that type of use. From the Conservation Commission standpoint, we look at that for habitat, and we look at a balance of all the pieces in the West End for both wildlife, water resources, that sort of thing, and feel that it would be best kept as a woodland. I understand the need for some of that, and I think there's a piece of the Ellis property that is still available to develop for fields in that type of use.
But some of it, Ellis, is with conservation though, Frank. Some of it's with the schools.
Right.
So, I mean, to get out of conservation, we have to go through Beacon Hill and try to do that.
Mhm.
And that's gonna be a long road to hoe, and in all probability, that won't happen. The schools then have to give it back, and there may be a school there. I mean, I'm not trying to, I saw this and I thought to myself, I'd been hearing about it as a possibility for fields, and I'm just kind of like, you know, it's a lot of money to be spending, and I've said this before with all the other purchases by the proponent, the Maxwell Trust, that sooner or later, and I said this last year with Crosby, is this the last one we're gonna get? And the answer was, well, I thought the answer was yes. And then this year, it was this one. 2 years ago, it was one with Steve Bjorklund's property and somebody else's, and every year we're coming up with it, and I'm like, we're spending for preservation of this, but of conservation land, but I'm like, we need ball fields. I mean, I can tell you right now, I've been to all these towns, and I'm amazed at Hingham's fields, Duxbury's fields, Marshfield's fields, and we don't have them, and this to me would be a great opportunity for the town to have open space for kids, for people, adults, recreation, and this is a passive recreation of just, you know, which I appreciate, but I have to say, I guess I'm the one to say that, you know, I would have rather have seen Recreation Department come up here as a proponent, with all due respect, no offense to the conservation, but for fields, because this is a large parcel that could solve a lot of issues that we have in recreation.
Well, I hear what you're saying about that. It was Maxwell Trust working with the Damon family to acquire this piece, and their wishes with that parcel. And
To remain this way, not,
Yes.
all right.
Well, was it ever discussed? Was it ever discussed that possibly a piece of it could be recreation?
We've never discussed
No.
that with.
I think that's
That's
John's
really
point.
what I'm trying to get at.
Again, you know, as you point out, there's 20 acres available at the Ellis site for fields that has not been used in, how many years has the Ellis property been in the hands of the town of Scituate?
Since the, it was this late 70s, early 70s.
So there's
yeah.
already 20 acres that's been not tapped for that. And we have this opportunity to acquire this piece of property and not have it be developed if we put it into a woodland type setting.
To your point, John, I don't recall seeing the backup, the map, what could be proposed with those other parcels you had mentioned earlier, and I see where you're going with this. But this is truly upland that we could be looking at this as another neighborhood.
Sure.
Unlike,
Oh, yeah.
I think the other parcels were, you know, had more wetlands. Am I right, Frank? I mean, this is your neighborhood, you know this like the back of your hand.
Some of the pieces that came from on the Bates Lane properties would have been much more difficult to develop because of access to them, the slopes, wetlands issues on the site. Even the Crosby piece has wetlands as we access it and around it. The big feature about this piece of property that makes it so important is its proximity to the South Swamp. There's an incredible amount of wildlife that all sort of networks around the swamp and the upland pieces, and that's why it's important to keep that. What we're acquiring is a lot of contiguous pieces of property, which make it much more valuable for habitat than, say, fragmented pieces.
Spots all over the place.
Right.
What can you, if this is required, what could be done with this besides walking and maybe cross-country skiing and so forth?
Well, we'd like to, one of the things that the commission's trying to institute through the study that we had done with the town school is we'll probably look for some passive forestry to happen, changes in habitat. But essentially, it'll be open space. And I can remember being on a study group a million years ago with the Driftway, and people talking about hotels, everything, and some woman stood up and said, how about just leaving it alone? How about just leaving it the way that it is?
It's also a part of our, the Scituate Open Space and Recreation Plan of 2009 that we created, the town created. And this parcel was a priority and recommended for preservation for not just the aquifer areas that affect, our water supply, but also it's a critical area that closes the gaps between the different wildlife habitats. So there's certainly a reason for that. And I know that Frank is, we've already started farming the Appleton property, which has been very successful. And I know that part of the study with the Conway School is helping to make some of this open space that we're protecting a little more productive for the town as opposed to just available for passive recreation. So if it's, some is not available for actual farming, but Frank has spoken about the tree farm, making it open for people to come and between trees, for down pieces of the forest as they have in years past.
With the price of oil, maybe we could cut some firewood up.
The other issue that I have with it, and I just want to make sure that we're clear, the other issue I have with it, and that's because the restriction, I think the conservation restriction needs to be held by a separate entity, and that's just my own feeling on it. In the wake of certain situations with the Maxwell Trust, I'm not comfortable of putting that restriction with them. I'd rather see if we had explored the prior conservation, or what was it, the trust set up by Carl Piper and those people, to see if they could hold, if that trust could hold the restriction instead.
I sent something the other day to Jim Toomey. There's another organization that would co-hold that conservation restriction or be on that. There's an organization called the New England Forest Foundation. We can get you some more information.
That would be good.
It's a organization that works hard with small woodlot owners, with different environmental groups. They've been instrumental in acquiring some beautiful pieces, not only in Massachusetts, but in all of New England. Big pieces in Maine and New Hampshire. I've talked to the director of operations there. It would be easy for us to do that, and we could have more than one person on the CR. I know that there's been some concerns that Maxwell is a smaller organization, but a CR is held for the purpose of making sure, actually, John, that once the property is acquired, that whatever was supposed to be done with it, to your point earlier, if someone said later on, geez, maybe we'd like to have a municipal building here or something like that, if the CR says this is open space for passive recreation or that sort of thing, then it remains that way. And the conservation restriction would say that, and then it's intended through the state to have an additional holder or two on that, as opposed to just having the town be the only person. But it's sort of, it is important, and we certainly are looking at the opportunity to have others be on that as well. And they're very interested. So I don't think that's a big issue.
I like John's idea of some sort of portion of that being recreation. I don't know if there's any ability to talk about that anymore. I mean, we have purchased all this land in the West End for conservation. And like you said, there is a need for that in the town. And I don't know that there's any
There are
30
land
acre
available.
lots anywhere.
Yeah.
Of course, it's completely up to you. You're donating it or selling it to the town at a discount, so, I mean, I don't know if you'd consider that at all, some portion of it. But that's not, we can talk about that another time, I guess.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Anyone from the audience? Not seeing any? Thank you, Frank. Thank you. All right. Frank, do you want this back? I know just where it is. Lisa, do you think other? All right, okay.
If any of you
This is
don't
helpful,
want it,
thanks, I appreciate it. This is
no,
good.
You're welcome to have it, but we can.
Yeah, no, well, I know where it is.
We're we can, certainly passing it around to a number of folks. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
The next project we'll talk about is the preservation of the Bailey Ellis House. Robin Glazer is here. So the CPC has voted to recommend funding of $79,000 for the restoration and preservation of the building envelope of the Bailey Ellis House. Most of you are familiar with the Bailey Ellis House, the house preservation property. It is an old 19th century Victorian Gothic house built in the late 1800s, owned by the town of Scituate, but it has been headquarters of the Scituate Arts Association, who's rented it and been responsible for it since 1971. So I can just toot your horn there so you don't have to do it. The Scituate Arts Association is a nonprofit organization run by a very small but active board of directors. They have, by the way, an excellent record so far of managing grant projects on time and within a budget. So we've seen them over the course of years now apply for just about every available grant, as well as conduct various fundraising activities, buy a brick campaign, Save the Tower fundraisers, volunteer paint-a-thons, in addition to applying for grants from National Trust for Historic Places, Preservation Massachusetts, mini grants, and there's just many, many more. And I list these just to let you know that it's a town-owned building, yet it's been very well managed and kept up quite nicely by this group. They've been able to tap into not just funds available, but also a lot of volunteer elbow grease to keep that house in really good shape. So I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the application in our Dropbox, but you can see before and after pictures of the house. And it's currently in very beautiful condition with regard to the exterior. The only issue is that it can't stay this way unless we start to protect the building envelope, and this project does that. It's a priority of the 212 update of the rehabilitation and reuse study that was prepared for this house. And the priority number one was to preserve the integrity of the building envelope by rehabilitating the site drainage and runoff issues, which is what this project is about. So I'll let you ask questions, and Robin will be able to answer everything you have with her tabbed files.
I told you guys earlier, I'd heard at the advisory committee meeting, and I think it's a great idea, and I think Lisa is right on by saying that this, if you haven't been up there, I have been up there, and it's a very neat building, just a lot of detail. It's just a very nice building, and I don't know where it would be without this group. Yourself and Janet and the whole association has done a lot of work on their own time through volunteers, and it would just not be in that condition today if it wasn't for them. So my only question is, and just right at the end, would be, did anyone from DPW, Kevin or Sean, look at any of this idea of where you might put the swales or how to redirect the water and so forth?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Is that something you
I can
could
find
do,
out for
Kevin?
sure.
Kevin Cafferty's back there.
We
Maybe-
could look at it.
Okay.
If they've got a plan, we can review it and take a look at it and see if we can help out in any ways.
All right,
Okay.
perfect, great. Anyone else?
So it's basically drainage. Drainage around the building and making sure the basement's hopefully somewhat dried and.
Which starts from the roof and goes all the way down. Part of the problem is even though some sections do have downspouts, this piece was recently replaced because it was rotted out and then it was painted with the historic colors. But this winter, you can see the water is coming underneath the wood and, you know, this will have to be replaced again pretty soon. And what we're running into is sort of a one step forward, one step back with this kind of stuff. The velocity and the volume of the water coming off those pitched roofs, where there are downspouts, they can't handle it. They're too narrow, and the water just spills over and ices and rots the wood out. And so we're going to keep running into that. We do keep running into that. It's just a recurring cycle, and we'd prefer to be able to take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and lately it's kind of been evening out with this kind of stuff. And so the roof would be addressed, the downspouts would be put in, the gutters would be put in, the basement would be addressed, and they would grade where needed away from the house so that it's no longer going into the basement but coming away from the house.
So, Robin, specifically, $80,000, you're putting a new roof on it, new gutters?
New gutters. There are 3 phases. There's actually a 4th phase that's not in this. We're going for grant funds from Massachusetts Cultural Council Facilities Fund to make it handicap accessible. So the 4th phase, we're hoping will be funded by them to put in the ramp and widen the door and.
But what's the 80,000?
So the 80,000 is for, there's 3 phases for this, and it's the site improvement, so that's gonna be getting rid of the pooling by, you know, correcting the foundation and the drainage issues, the basement improvements, and the roof improvements. The roof improvements include upgrading the drainage system for the size and complexity of this roof line, which you can see right there. It's gonna do weather-tight roof cladding, it's gonna install period-appropriate, adequately sized and appropriately located gutters and downspouts, which we currently don't have. And it'll replace the existing roof with new asphalt shingles, rubber underlayment, and metal flashing. So that's the roof portion.
Is it slate now, or is it, what's the roof now?
Apparently, let's see, what does his report say? I think it's slate.
Part of
And
it
I
is
think
anyway,
that-
I think, Robin.
Let's say,
Pardon?
I think part of it is anyway.
Part of it is, and I think part of it is like wood, like the old.
cedar shingles?
Yeah.
Right.
So are they
So
replacing
there's
the
a-
entire roof then, or is it just a portion of the roof that they're
It's
looking
gonna,
to
I think
do?
it's gonna have to be the whole roof, you know.
40 grand anyway.
And the site improvements are gonna include, redirecting water away from the foundation, which has been an issue. If you go up there right now, even on the drive, you've got pooling and ice over conditions where the pooling is, so.
It sheets
this
down to the
would-
house from where you drive
Yeah.
up,
So
yeah.
this would not only take care of bringing it away from the basement, but it'll also take care of getting rid of that pooling, which is nice for the people coming off the trails and driving up there because this is in their path, both for the equestrians and the dog walkers and the, you know, vehicles, this pooling area, which actually we've got, you know, like this was in the summer, that's right out in front of the house is like right here. And right around here is where you get a lot of the pooling and the icing. So they kind of have to walk around that when they come through. This would take care of that as well. And then and it looks like some of these things can go on simultaneous with each other. So we could either do them consecutively, or some of them could be addressed at the same time. So we have some options in terms of, you know, how long it's gonna take. And then the ADA Act part of that, assuming we get funding, would also potentially be able to.
Are they doing, whoever's, I assume the professional, are they adding more downspouts? And are they connecting it, at least on the side between the parking or the drive in the house into some kind of a system to kind of run it out and going
Yeah, and
around?
it's gonna go underground and dump out on the other
Side,
side
okay.
of the existing driveway.
Okay.
And it goes out, several feet further from where the driveway ends and the grass starts, and that's where it's gonna
Push it
dump
out and get it out
over
of there, okay.
So just by this thing, it looks like the roof is 27,000, the gutters are 5,000. I'm a little unclear, there's a lot of money going to the basement. This 10 grand must be for the,
They putting a sump in or something?
There will be sumps, there will be some French drains installed. Originally, the estimate was higher. We asked him to go back and revisit it, and he realized he could take out some of the French drains in the basement to save some money and still do what it needs to do, because there is one section of the basement that gets really wet and muddy. And so we would have to keep the drains in there with the sumps. But the other section could actually probably do without. So the budget that we have currently was our second go-around to reduce the cost.
what goes on in the basement? Because a lot of old houses have basements like that. Is there art stuff going on down there, or is it storage?
Storage.
There is some storage. There's not much going down. I mean, we don't have classes down there or anything like that. It's not habitable for that kind of stuff. There is a lot of wet, kind of muddy
Right, but once you
sediment.
do all this, I assume, there's like 40 grand going into the basement. Is that gonna be a used spot at that point? Is that?
I mean, it depends on, it's a stone foundation, so I think it would depend on what we end up with. How dry is it gonna turn out to be after this work is completed? What's happening is the moisture is working its way up through the entire building, and it's sort of attacking what the architect calls the envelope, which is, the exterior. And so that combined with the roof issues is sort of just creating a circular moisture effect, which is degrading the integrity of it. I don't think we have at this point any plans to do anything in the basement. It's hard to imagine what we would do until we see the end result and see how usable it is down there.
Is there an apartment down there? It used to be.
Upstairs, the addition, which is at the back end of the house, and I don't remember what year that was added on, that's where the caretaker lives.
Okay. All right.
But that's not as old as the rest of the house.
Like Robin said, it would just dry out the basement, which would help preserve the whole house. That's why, Robin, I think it's so important you talk to Sean and Kevin about this, because I think if it's done properly, you will not need sump pumps. You're up on high enough hill, I think gravity might just take care of it. But if you can find out, Kevin and Sean are nodding, if they can find out what the groundwater, I think is probably coming from 3A towards the house, and if a perimeter drain was dug around, and it would deflect it all, go right around it. Maybe not even have the need for pumps, but that's just, I'm guessing. But it's a fieldstone foundation, it's storage and stuff like that.
That's a good point, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, or, I'm sorry to interrupt, Robin, that it, or any other questions? No?
Can we get 4 more copies of this so everyone can see this?
Sure, Madam Clerk, this is a complete application, and I think a lot of the questions that you're asking about what detailed work would be done in the basement alive, you'll see here, there's also some very comprehensive site drawings that include how the water will be draining, what the basement looks like now, and what it's supposed to look like when it's finished, so it's a pretty comprehensive package. And there are at least 2 more copies of that budget in there as well.
Great.
Will you be done with that tonight, Tony?
Yeah,
Pass it on?
I'll give you a couple minutes. I'm almost done with it now.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on this article? If not, thank you very much. You did a good job.
Our next project is the skate park renovation. Chris Roberts from our recreation department, come up.
Bring the kids up. Bring the kids up.
So the CPC has voted to fund $406,114 for the construction and installation of a new skate park at current location at Scituate High School.
So, Sean, as you know, because you're our liaison, with the changes in the CPA laws in the state, we kind of set a long-term plan with the rec commission as to how we would want to see some project going in the future, and prioritize them and then reprioritize them, depending upon what we get approved or what we feel is attainable. So this skate park is the only project we're putting forward this year, because we think it's shovel-ready. We're under the impression, although nobody knows the final determination yet, but we're under the impression that where the current skate park exists now, probably won't be affected by a new school. So we feel that once we get the results of that study in June, that we can just start progress immediately.
And that's coming from John. Did he write a letter, or was it a verbal?
I think it was just kind of a verbal.
We do have a, right.
No, go ahead.
Jennifer met with Superintendent McCarthy and
That's right.
another group, and she reported back that he was very much in favor of just keeping it there, unless there were some unusual circumstances that forced them to move it, they wouldn't, and that was confirmed by Doran Whittier, the architect, as well.
And that's the proponents, that's what they'd like to see it right there in the same place as well.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And Dan Monger, who's here tonight, has rallied a great group of people to really push this thing hard and fast. They pulled a lot of things together in a short period of time to get this done. So there's quite a bit of private fundraising that'll be done to support this as well. And part of the hope with some of that private fundraising is to set aside some money for maintenance. Although the newer construction processes that they're using are far more weatherproof than what we have out there right now. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was probably get at least another 10 or 15 years out of a park before we start really doing any serious maintenance to the newer park designs. I think Hingham's put theirs in, what was that, Phil, 2 years ago? 2 years ago. And there have been some slight surface fixes and things, but there's been no major issues with the integrity of the park. So I think we'd be following the same type of construction.
Is there anything, and I've heard Hingham now a couple of times at a couple different meetings, is there anything we can do to even improve what they've done, learn from maybe some mistakes they've made?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's with professional design and working with some professionals in that regard, and not winging it, if you will, on our own. So,
Great,
yeah.
okay, sorry.
It's okay.
That it?
Yeah.
All right, questions? Board?
Just a little bit, what are you gonna do? You're gonna destroy the one that's there and build a new one?
And that's all built into the budget. So we will, the rink will stay where it is, obviously. And then the skate park will wrap around the rink the way it is now. And there's also there's another little piece out behind one of the starting ramps in between the stadium bleachers and out behind the tennis courts there. It's really kind of not used at all right now. It's just dark space and wooded. And we're talking about possibly maybe pushing the park even further back that direction, pick up a little bit more square footage, and then just kind of maybe expand a little bit into the hill a little bit.
Just kind of a comment, Chris. I sat, I've heard it a few times and so forth, and I've seen that, Linda Steveman there, and I haven't, talked to Billy Hoffman about it, or the Hoffman family. I know that they're on board. I mean, it's almost bittersweet. That was built, with those couple of families really behind it, and I saw Linda at the advisory committee meeting, sat next to her, and, they're embracing this, aren't they?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah,
that's,
absolutely.
that's
They want
important,
to see this- They want to see this legacy continued.
All right.
It's getting to the point where, a lot of the pieces in there are starting to deteriorate.
Right.
They weren't made to last as long as they've been out there.
And we were, I think, through the Scituate Pipe, I'm involved in delivering those parks to different towns, so we were one of the first towns to have it, so in defense, maybe other people, like I just said earlier, learned from what we might have done wrong, or they've improved in it, but I just wanted to say, I just hope there aren't any hard feelings, but I think I would have heard by now.
I don't think there are at all.
Okay,
No, I think
the
everybody wants
family
to see,
blesses
see
this.
the next generation of it.
Right.
Right.
In fact, I was gonna add, we're raising our funds through the Friends of Scituate Recreation with the help of the Steverman family, so.
All right.
So if you make a donation, it actually goes to the Friends of Scituate Recreation, so they're
Okay.
more than embracing, they're actually actively participating.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any comments? All right?
It's great. I think it's a great idea.
It's a great project.
It really is.
And Chris, I was just thinking the softball field.
Yep.
Remember we put that on hold until we know, where's that going in relationship to this?
Geographically?
Yeah.
It'll be.
In front of it?
No, it'll be between us and the basketball courts essentially. So if you're going up where the buses are parked.
Where the current playground is now.
The proposed idea is that you'll take a hard right there by the current playground, loop out and around, and the softball field will be right there. to your left.
Okay. Great.
Great, thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
He's gonna do his homework first.
He's got a broken finger.
Yeah.
From skateboarding.
Not for basketball, actually.
Good.
Thanks. Thank you.
See you, Dan.
Thank you, Mongers. So a really nice thing I just want to comment on is for our meeting, the Mongers and all of their skateboarding friends and families all filled the GAR hall with skateboarding support. They had started a website, they've done a YouTube video, they've gotten all kinds of testimonials from skateboarders and parents and families, including folks who just want to talk about how this group of skateboarders is one of the cultures of Scituate that really isn't addressed by some of our other recreational projects, such as any type of organized sports and such. So it was a really nice group of people just hoping to be able to continue on with their skateboarding environment and improve it and expand it. And it was really, I think, a really nice exercise in civics for this group of kids. They are learning the process of creating a project, marketing it, getting support, not just financial support, but community support, and going to all the board meetings that they need to, and they'll culminate at town meeting and see what happens. And I think it's a really nice experience for some of our younger folk here in the community.
Right.
They've done a nice job.
Yep. Thanks for mentioning that, Lisa. Yep.
Our last project, but not least, is the Tilden Multi-Use Trail. This is Jeff Carr and
Dave McDonough.
Dave McDonough. And so this is an area on Tilden Road that we've all looked at time and time again, but have always realized that there's been an issue with regard to pedestrians and bicyclists who are trying to get from certainly the Harbor area or any area down the road to the Wampatuck School. But because this road is, number one, a scenic road, number two, narrow and old, and has a lot of historic character in it, the trees, the stone walls and such, it's always been one that we've kind of kept away from. It's been high on Al's sidewalk priority list, yet nobody's really taken the time to dig in and see if we could get something done. And this neighborhood group has done that. It's been very impressive. They first met with Al and talked about possibilities. He took a look at it, and they went on from there. And I'll let them talk about their process. But to let you know that we, the Community Preservation Committee has voted to fund $375,000 for Phase 1, and this Phase 1 is the piece on Tilden Road from Beaver Dam to Turner Road, which is one of the most trafficked areas connecting residential neighborhoods to the Wampatuck School sidewalks.
So,
Hi, Jeff. Before, do you have a packet for this? Or just a
Yes.
map or something more than?
I
can give you one.
Do you have a handout? That would be
And
helpful.
then I've got one here too that you can.
I met with her the other
go on with.
See you later.
Thank you.
So you can look through it. This is a very nice PowerPoint
bring it to the meeting.
presentation.
Thank you.
Following a little bit. Make sure you flip through the whole thing.
The only thing weird about Tilden, do you know Tilden pretty well? No. The property lines are all screwed up. Because my brother used to own the house on the other side, from where they live. And the property lines are kind of messed up. And I don't know if they...
Yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
Sorry.
That's all right,
So
okay.
we live
Sorry.
on Tilden Road, and when I first moved to town a few years ago, it's pretty obvious, I think, when you live on Tilden, that it would be really nice to have a sidewalk there. And when
Bless you.
we started looking into some of the details and some of the history of the area to find out if it was feasible, what the town's plan was for sidewalks, we discovered pretty quickly a lot of the hurdles that were faced with this area. But then in the
some things started coming together. So for example, the 2007 sidewalk study highlighted this section of road as being one of the 5, I believe, as needing a sidewalk. The 2009 open spaces plan that was approved by the town also highlighted the need for sidewalks and trails in the community to help link things. There was the Grand Loop plan that the CPC had gotten involved in, trying to link different communities and trying to create Grand Loops through the town. And this particular section is missing, any kind of pedestrian access to be able to create a lot of larger loops in the town. And so by finishing off 3 phases, you're really linking up almost the entire town to this side of the town, I would say, by Country Way and to the harbor, and you're connecting all these new developments that have been placed on Tilden into the harbor, into the beaches, into, Wampatuck School is right there. It's a trail, so it's something that can be used by anybody of any age and any physical ability, really. And one of the important aspects, I believe, of this is that because of the scenic nature of the road and the fact that it's also pretty narrow, we understand that there's, putting a 6 to 8 foot wide trail might be pretty difficult, but we have reached out to neighbors already and garnered the support of the community and spoken with, like, for example, Dave and myself both live on Tilden, and we'd be willing to have the trail on our property so that we could preserve the scenic nature of the road and not lose trees and stone walls. So we've had great success so far campaigning in town and getting the endorsement of a lot of different groups, everything from the school committee to the Council on Aging, Recreation Commission, traffic regulations has endorsed it. So that's where we are with it.
And not to underplay that one point that Jacqueline mentioned, as you know, everybody conceptually thinks of pedestrian ways, a wonderful thing until it crosses across your front yard. And that's usually where we start to hear some pushback. But they, again, have done a really impressive job of just going door to door, folks on the road, and talking to them about it. And quite a few of the residents along the road have actually offered to have the multi-use trail come onto their property and meander around trees and other different elements of character that people would like to maintain in order not to disrupt, number one, the character of the road, but also just to maintain even a further element of safety to bring that trail off of the road, which is pretty narrow and kind of curved as well. So it's one of the first times that we've actually had that many residences really in favor of something like this and willing to actually sacrifice some of their own frontage in order to get it there. So we felt that was that really tipped the scales in favor of supporting this project.
John?
Yeah, what side of the road is it going on? Eastern or western?
The study would determine
Determine it?
There's going to be issues on both sides, I think, and so the first order of business will be to determine where the public access actually is. From what I've learned, roads can actually move several feet anytime they're paved, so we think that the public access is probably between the 2 stone walls, which is even hard to tell where they are at this point on the road, but so based on that, there's either going to have to be maybe some cutting into the ground on one side or building up of the ground on the other side. So engineering will come back with a 60% design and propose an idea of, like, you'd have to cross the road 3 times or 2 times, but here's where it could go.
Is that engineering, are we doing any of that in-house? I know that obviously it's a proposal, but is that with Kevin? Are we doing any of that?
I was going to ask that. Can we, Kevin? I had asked that of Val before, and I know, I'm sorry to jump in, John, on Stockbridge Road and stuff, and, I knew, you guys have a lot to do, but I just think it would be huge if we could do some of that in-house, as John suggested.
It would be great. I think the biggest problem that we're gonna have is just doing all the water work. I don't think we're gonna have time this year to jump on it. It could be a winter project that we could do, but the start off would be a full property survey in that whole area, to figure out which side of the road it could go on, and also an evaluation where the poles are to see if it's, how it's gonna fall with poles, how many poles need to be moved, and what we could do to fit it in.
So Kevin's gone through this process with Al now on the Country Way piece, and we all had envisioned this multi-use trail on one side or another, but once the engineering research takes place, they find that by the nature of the road widths and where the telephone poles are, and if you'd have to take land versus not taking land, you know, that can change. And so for Country Way, it looks like they're thinking much more of moving the poles on one side as opposed to doing land taking on the other side. So all this seems to come out in the engineering process, and it's kind of an important piece.
This might be the first time I've heard the trail maybe going zigzag instead of just straight down
Yeah,
the
it's
side of the
nice.
road, right, so maybe, yeah.
Well, the Driftway does that a little bit.
Right, that's true, right.
No, I just think it's a great, I think this is neck and neck with Stockbridge for a potential for a horrible situation to happen. It's, since the development, it's extremely narrow, it's an old road, and that's the way the road was laid out, and this stretch alone, I think, would be huge, and your theory of the next two phases, I think, would be great. I think you're going to have more problems with the MBTA, with the crossing there, but nonetheless, I think it's a great project, and I'd love to see this finished. And frankly, I'd love to see people begin to propose putting one up Hatherley, from the end of Hadley to connect with Gannett Road. And then you'd really, truly have linkage from North Scituate down to South Scituate, down to Greenbush. But, great project.
Anyone else?
Just a couple, so there's three I'm looking at the map here.
Yeah.
So where's phase one?
So phase one is the north piece,
So-
going from the intersection at Beaver Dam to Turner, where a sidewalk actually starts.
So the northern part of
Right
it
there?
is Turner?
Yeah.
A. Now up to the top?
Up higher.
That's Turner Road at the top?
Yep, down there to there.
So the intersection there is Beaver Dam.
And then this would be 2 and 3
It
going,
was actually the opposite, so two.
Two would go down,
two's the short piece?
that's Tilden,
What is
down
that?
to Brook Street.
And what's the total cost of all three phases?
We don't know the total of all three because we don't have the MBTA piece for the third phase.
Right.
But for the total cost of phase 1 and 2, it would be 543, which is, these are estimate numbers I got
Right.
from Al.
So, and assume that's probably another couple, so we're talking about $750,000, $800,000 for the whole thing, ballpark?
More money.
Except for the crossing. of
Yeah, the
railway
MBTA, I mean,
tracks.
that's I mean,
That's, yeah.
That section is funny because there's not as many homes there, so it's, I think there's probably less issues per se, but then you have one really big issue.
right,
The key to that phase, is as well as it connects the ball field there.
right. Right,
Yeah, I think makes sense to link it. The bigger issue is getting it over, whether we build, stop, and then you take your risk. I wish we had dealt with that with the MBTA, but I think the linkage, then you get from the common down to the harbor. I mean, it's a really key component of linking that whole area.
We were counting in our neighborhood, or sort of in the stretch where we live on Tilden, and those homes, there's 60 kids, and so
Yeah.
at any given time, there's people riding bikes in the middle of Tilden. We walk in the middle
I
of
see
Tilden.
people jogging in the middle of it, and it's dangerous.
Well, it's safer to be in the middle of the road than it is on the side,
Right.
because you don't really see people on the side. You see people when they're in the middle of the road.
Jackie, do the children in your neighborhood walk to Wampatuck School?
Well, we're technically walkers to
Right.
Wampatuck, but we have to pay for bus fees, because there's a couple families that actually do walk it, but
No, and I realize that, but my wife grew up and she walked down that way, and once you get to Tilden and Turner,
Then
there
there's
is a
sidewalk,
sidewalk.
yeah.
So I mean, there could be a potential of children walking to Wampatuck.
I think it takes you, the sidewalk will take you all the way down to Egypt Beach.
yes.
Well,
From
that's
there.
what we were asking. We were talking about that the other night.
Yeah, so for our neighborhood, it would take us to Egypt Beach, down to Sand Hills, to the harbor,
Yeah.
and then we finish the other phases of football fields and then middle school.
right. Was this part of you were involved in the plan before, the one that went down the Driftway. Where did that, because there were phases that were gonna do that whole loop, but that kind of stopped.
You talking about the Driftway, that little connector to the harbor?
Well, just the whole thing.
Sidewalk study?
It was a $5 million
No,
project.
you were in the one for the Driftway in Gannett.
Or whatever it was. It was huge when we looked at the whole
Yeah,
thing.
no, it's chipping away. So the last couple of multi-use trails that we've voted for, that we've funded, one is Country Way, then there's the Harbor Walk.
Harbor Walk,
All
yeah.
those are all little elements that are
Right.
all connecting that.
And was this
original
part,
grand-
is this kind of part of it as well? Oh, good. So it is coinciding with the master plan
Right,
of the,
yeah, so
of
the
the big
sidewalk
loop.
plan and including the grand loop are the same.
good? Great.
Right. Anything else?
No, great project.
Sounds good. Very good. Good luck. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Thank
So
you.
that concludes our projects for fiscal year 2015. Any other questions?
I just have one question. In terms of the total financial,
Yes.
So, the
You
total,
want this, guys want that back?
you sure? All right, we'll leave it across the hall.
The total projects that you're proposing are $1.6 million, 1.662.
Correct.
And the total amount that we got in from taxes and from the state, is that 168?
Correct, that's estimated for, I mean, that's pretty close what the state matching funds are. As you know, our surcharge varies.
Right, but
each
it's
year.
about $1 million. So we're spending basically everything that we brought in this year in these
That's
projects.
correct. So if you're asking about what's in the reserves right now, Nancy's been kind enough to.
They're on my desk.
Yeah, we're gonna go through that. As you know, we've had a couple of accountants over the last
Yeah.
couple of years since John's been here, and I've noticed a couple of discrepancies. Some years, as you know, we always vote reconciliations to put unused funds back into our general fund or in the categories that they come from. Some of those look like they took place, others have not. They're still appearing on my budget sheets that come in. And so I'm questioning exactly, how our categories are funded right now. I know what they should be, but they don't look like they're there yet. But what we do know is there's approximately $3 million of unencumbered funds in the general fund, if that's what you were asking. And those will not be touched for this year.
That's general fund, and there's obviously some in the housing piece. That doesn't include the housing piece or the,
That does, so some of that is supposed to be allocated.
So it's not the
to
general
different
fund, that's-
categories. Correct,
Right.
sorry, the reserves.
so, any chance we could get a copy of that by the next meeting?
I'm hoping that we will.
Okay,
on
or at least
Thursday.
ballpark numbers, so we can,
Yep, we
Great.
can have it in your Thursday packet.
great.
All
Thank you
set,
very
Tom?
much.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Walnut Tree Hill's all set. Moving on to appointments. We have an appointment, as I had mentioned earlier. A few people moving up the ladder.
Move to, that the Board of Selectmen appoint Sean McCarthy, interim town engineer, to South Shore Regional Recycling Cooperative.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I'll move that the Board appoint Linda Hayes to the
Have a
GATRA
lovely-
Advisory Board.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, we'll get on to discussion and review of some town meeting articles, one being the town pier, and Mark's been here. And,
Oh, poor guy.
can bring us up to, anyone have a discussion with Mark about what's going on, or I'll let Mark just take over?
I read the stuff.
All right, okay.
Mark Patterson, 6 Mountain Master, with Welsh from Child's Engineering. Dick Eckhouse was also kind enough to with us tonight, Chairman of the Selectmen Waterways Commission. I did have a chance to speak with our liaison, Mr. Murray, and I spoke with Patricia about this as well. We're here, again, as part of our ongoing effort to rehabilitate our commercial fish pier. The history is well known, the importance of the pier, both economically and historically and culturally. As part of this process, we put bids and specifications out December the 25th with a due date of January 23rd, at which time we opened those bids here in the secretary room. 5 companies bid on the project. Unfortunately, all of the bids were higher than our estimate and thus our budget. The difference between the lowest estimate, which came in from Coastal Marine Construction, and our budget was a little over $140,000, $140,461.10 to be exact. The Seaport Advisory Council, who has thus far funded 80% of this project, came down, they sat with us in mid-February to talk about the bids and also about possible next steps. Seaport has been unwavering in their support of the project and the town, both with this project and others. They've been fantastic partners, and they remain committed to this project. They hope to see it completed in its entirety at this point, and they are willing to once again step up financially, which means in order to go forward, the town too will have to shoulder our portion of the cost. What they're proposing is that the construction costs of $140 be divided, split between the town and the state. They would then put in an additional approximately $60,000, $59,540 as a contingency. So the total need to be committed to the project is $200,000, again, with the split being 65-35, the state assuming 65%, the town assuming 35%. once again, it's a great project, it's been an ongoing project. Unfortunately, our budget was a little short, but that doesn't diminish, I think, the value of the project or the importance of the pier to the community. And so we're here, once again, to respectfully request that the board support a town meeting article for those additional funds, the amount of $70,231 for the waterways enterprise fund.
You have my support.
That it, Tony? John?
I agree with Tony.
Okay. Marty, all set?
Same thing.
All right, okay.
Short and sweet.
Yep, all right. Okay, guys.
Sorry to keep you
Thank
so
you.
late.
Yeah.
Do you need a motion, or I think we can
I
deal with
don't
that next week,
think-
right?
Yeah,
or what is
we
it?
do. Yeah, no, we do.
So is this a,
Says
is
request
this one
for
of our
vote.
articles? How do,
Yes, yes, I believe it is.
So we'll deal with it we'll vote it next week, but you know we're gonna vote for it.
that's great. I mean,
I have a pretty good idea who might want to speak on it. But it's just my
He's
guess.
not here right now.
All right, then he cannot.
So let's get somebody else to speak on, how's that?
All right, okay, next, well, thank you
Thank you,
very
Mark.
much.
Thank you,
Yeah,
gentlemen.
thanks for sticking
Appreciate
around
it.
all night.
but there is a motion here.
Is there?
Well, that's what I saw at the end, that's what I'm saying. You don't need a motion, Mark, do
It
you?
says discuss and review.
Request for vote.
Okay.
Yeah, that.
Okay, all right, yeah, okay.
If we do, we'll put it on for next week and vote it, but it will be pretty much a
And they-
30-second.
They wouldn't even have to come, it would be
Yeah.
done. All right.
Thanks very much.
Next is the South Shore Recycling Co-op intermunicipal agreement. Kevin was here.
I didn't see that.
ago.
What is,
You know what?
it's not in our packet.
We don't have it? And I.
This is where we turn to Nancy and say, Nancy, where is it? What's this all about? Can you please explain it?
Absolutely, and I'll say, let me go find Kevin for you.
Yeah, I don't have anything. Did you
All
have
right,
anything?
Let's wait for the
All
next.
right, yes.
Postpone
Yeah,
that one.
Yes, we'll put it off till the next meeting.
Better start the next meeting early.
All right. All right, other business, we have correspondence. I don't think we do. We have minutes and other business. So not seeing any correspondence, I'll accept a motion to accept some minutes.
Move to accept the minutes of February 18th, 2014.
And a
Second.
motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And approve the executive session minutes as presented.
And a motion and a second by John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. All right, other business. I'll start with Marty. Do you have anything?
I did earlier.
Okay,
let me
Tony.
think. Yeah, you can start, Tony.
It's 11:15.
Yeah.
I'm only kidding. Do you have anything?
No, I just want to remind everybody that the St. Patrick's Parade is on the 16th, that's incorrect in our packet, but it is the 16th of March, and there are a lot of fundraisers coming up. So if you go to weloveaparade.com, and they could certainly use the support.
What's happening this Saturday, Pier 44?
Saturday is a children's thing. I believe it's, hold on, I do have that.
Starts
10
at 10.
o'clock?
Is it 10? Because I know they changed it because it was on here at the wrong. Yeah, it's going to be 10 to 2 at the community center. And then there's some fundraisers. There's a fundraiser for one of the candidates at the Barker Tavern on Saturday evening. There's another one.
That was last Saturday.
Yeah, there's another one, I think the same night at the Tinker's Son for another one of the candidates. And then there's a pizza party at the Mill Wharf for, 5 o'clock on Monday.
11 o'clock tonight?
Yeah, they say, 5 o'clock on Monday at the Mill, so, and there'll be entertainment there as well.
Tony and I will be. Tony?
The only thing I want to bring up is that I was at a fax meeting last night. Mike was there as well, and the turnout is just improving every meeting. There must have been 70 people there last night, and Anne Marie's doing a great job. They broke up into groups, and they're starting to really get task force together to start attacking different initiatives. And, they're just doing a really good job, and there's a lot of participation from the town and from surrounding towns. So really upbeat on the progress of that group.
Can I just ask you a question about that? How do you find out about the meeting? How do you know? Like, I don't get emails
It's
or
not
anything?
it's posted, isn't it, Tony?
I get an email. I get a couple
All right,
emails.
maybe it was email.
Yeah, we can get an email.
Okay, no, because Jim Cantwell had called me at the original big one you had, and I didn't know about it, and he called me about 5 minutes before the meeting.
We get you the list, and then they're also, Anne Marie's gonna start giving us a listing of all the events, because those are just the fax meetings, the coalition meetings, but there are events probably every other week where there's some sort of something for kids or adults or some help group or something that we're going to announce here at the meetings as well, so
Okay,
there's a lot going on there.
good, good.
That's it.
All right, John?
Yeah, I, two things. One is in conjunction with you're talking about, Tony. I'd gotten an email, you probably have gotten it, but on the 30th, I think it's Saturday, March 30th, there's going to be a vigil. The Scituate Clergy Association has taken up to address the crisis dealing with prescription drug abuse and heroin, and so they're going to come before us next week, but I told them that I would raise it at least now. I know it's 11 at night, anybody who's watching TV probably not going to listen to it, but Ruth is here. I mean, hey, it's something to be aware of it, but a serious issue that all facets, including facts, and the town, hopefully
different
other,
churches.
well, the clergy and the churches and the parishes, and we'll all be involved in getting involved on the 30th, and maybe even some of the businesses. But that was one thing I wanted to give notice to. The other was, I know there's been some requests for people to maybe apply towards the Veterans Advisory Council, and there's some people who may be looking to join, and that's another issue that we might want to address about going forward with the Veteran Service Officer. Aside from that, happy Mardi Gras. There you go.
That's right, too. That's tonight.
Tonight.
Okay.
That's it.
I don't have anything at this hour. The next agenda item is to move into executive session, and it's relative to the deployment of devices, a discussion of the security personnel, or strategies with respect here too. So if Nancy would be so kind to
Do a roll call vote.
Paul, if she would.
Mr. Danahy?
Yes.
Mr. Harris? Mr. Vignani?
Yes.
Mr. O'Toole?
Yes.
I move that the Board of Selectmen go into executive session to discuss strategy relative to the deployment of devices and the discussion of security personnel or strategies with respect thereto.
And we will
Second.
not, a motion and a second, we will not be going into regular session. We'll be adjourning after that.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.